David, to the fire code. Oh, sorry, no more fire code. Okay.
Okay.
It's like, you know, okay. It's going to take a couple meetings before.
Yeah.
Anyway, we have quite a few presentations this evening. Our first presentation is going to be student transportation.
Yes.
Mr. Davidson?
Yes. Good evening. So one of the concerns that's been presented in the past few weeks is some concerns about transportation. So the board is taking a two-tier approach. One, they're reviewing policy to look at distances and to review whether or not we can even amend policy to look at entry points and exit points. And that's going to take a while. We have to do an analysis, which I assure you we will do this year. There'll be a cost analysis that will take us several months to do to the public so that you have the information relative to what it would take for us to move starting at endpoints to homes and to school entrances. We understand there's been a lot of frustration in the community. So one of the things that we are doing today, which is a good first so regulation is a change because what it does with the policy is it outlines an appeal process. It indicates to the community, and there are copies here as well, if a parent wanted to appeal mileage and they felt that they would be eligible for the child to take a bus, that we wanted to outline the process. So the regulation puts that in place. It talks about how we determine that, and and it also will talk about the time frame in which we would have to respond. And that's certainly a difference and something we recognize needs to happen. For those of you who aren't aware, about a little over a year ago, there was an audit done in order to determine, and it was found that we had not been in compliance with state regulations. State regulations require that we follow our own policy and tabulate miles based on our entries and exit points. And when that occurred last August, families were there was a decision that was made that was erroneous and in violation of state regulations that allowed people to remain on the buses who were not eligible. In February, that was founded again, and families were informed that they too would not receive the bus. And that obviously is a great deal of consternation and inconvenience and difficulty for families. We understand that. However, we've been asked to grandfather families in, and as legal counsel can assert, we're not permitted to do that. We face the loss of state aid if we were to do that, and the potential for fines, and we just cannot incur that and pass it on to taxpayers, and that would be irresponsible. So this is a good first step, I believe, and I thank the board for working with us on this in order to at least outline an appeal process to give further information to the community should they move forward, and we will move forward to have this in place as early as the end of this week, because as a regulation, it doesn't require the typical process that a board policy would, which would be 2 reads and then adoption. The superintendent can put a regulation in place. I don't know if there's any discussion.
Does anybody have any questions? This lady?
Good evening, everybody. Last year, I petitioned all of my neighbors. I gave you 170 signatures to have the child safety zone evaluation, which, working with Denise, it was finally completed. They deemed that we are 1.4 miles from the parking lot of the high school. I am 1.6 miles following this way, so I don't know what they measured, but they also calculated 120 people flying down Lowood Avenue in less than 15 minutes. That's 120 opportunities for my kids to get hit. I have been living in Lindenhurst for 21 years. So you made a mistake for 21 years saying that we were eligible for a bus, because I have now parents that were students at the bus on 38th and Catskill every single day. I work for the health system. Our health system all around. My day starts at 6 a.m. because that's when our patients go to surgery. My husband also works for the health system. I am not sending my child by foot in snow or rain to the high school to cross Wellwood, where there has been a reported death every single year on that road. How would you be able to live with yourself if our children get hit? There are not stop signs where they measured and they noted in their report. There are no sidewalks in our village. It is not okay. You cannot decide that you made a mistake 22 years down the road and try to rectify it, and now all these students don't have buses. I want it reevaluated because your little form says to the front entrance. If I have to drive through your parking lot, that is the extra mileage. Now I'm over 1.5. And if I go the back way, which is the safest way, so my daughter can cross on John Street where there's crossing guards, it's 3.2 miles. And she runs with cross country and she runs with track. And their exercise is to run from the high school to the middle school. That's only a third of the way home. She then has to go all the way towards Old Indiana. It's not safe.
You live on 38th and Catskill, right?
I live on 39th between Buffalo and Catskill.
So one of the things that they were calculating, though, for that mileage is the Cobb Street. And this is the problem I can't wrap my head around, is that, Katie, yeah, we discussed this, is that we're not calculating the safest route. And now we actually have kids that were getting buses, walking past the bus stop. They used to get on the bus.
Yes.
So somewhere along the line, I got to figure we're better than this. This is just like of all the problems we've had. And I appreciate the audit.
I don't know if you're aware, I'm sorry for Giuseppe, but last week, one of the dogs got out and was hit by a truck, and the truck kept going. That could have been my daughter.
God forbid. But, you know, we're not even including sidewalks. That's like, here's another thing I wanted to ask about. When we talk about a study, when you talk about regulations versus laws, who makes the determination for the distances that we have to calculate that doesn't include safety?
So the mileage eligibility thresholds are set by the voters through proposition. The way that the mileage is calculated is set through the New York State Transportation Regulation as well as board policy. So board policy establishes where the measuring starting and ending points are. For starting point should be, according to board policy, 410 is directly in front of the entrance to the dwelling, perpendicular to the center of the entrance in the middle of the street. Ending points by building changes based upon the building. So the elementary schools is at the curb in front of the main entrance, directly in front of it. At the middle school, there's two endpoints. Whichever one's closer, it's either the curb directly in front of the north and south entrance on Wellwood Avenue, and the high school is the closest of the main entrance and the cafeteria entrance at the curb.
Did you say walking in the middle of the street? Can you clarify that? It's calculated from the middle of the street.
The starting point.
The starting point is the middle of the street, so children are expected to walk in the middle of the
No.
street. No,
This is
that's
just-
the measurement. Is that the expectation?
No, it's not.
Yes or no?
It's just for determining mileage.
Okay.
It's just for
Help me
determining
understand that. So
mileage.
determine mileage is different.
No, I appreciate
Please,
no, I appreciate
one
me all of
person
that,
at a
sir.
time. Mr. DiGiuseppe, are you finished?
No, I'm not. Do we have the authority to calculate from the safest route instead of as the crow flies? If not, how do we get to the point where we are allowed to use the safest route instead of the shortest route or whatever? Because I just can't imagine. It's almost draconian to tell someone your distance includes crossing a highway.
Right, so what we're asking is if our board policy is set up as far as the place from the middle of the house to the front of the school, couldn't we amend the policy to have the safest route for these people?
I'll just ask legal to weigh in on this, but I'm going to read right out of the New York State Ed Pupil Transportation Regulation. Measurements for determining eligibility for transportation must be made over the nearest available route between home and school. It's silent to whether that route is safe or unsafe.
Okay, so
But if it's not an available route, though.
We're not arguing. We're just telling you what the regulation
So
says.
if it's silent on that, could we amend our policy?
It's not silent. It says must be made over the nearest available route between home and school.
Here's the available route, okay? But that's-
It's for determining eligibility. It doesn't say that you have to walk or drive that route. It's just saying for determining eligibility.
So it's not an available route if you're crossing a highway. That route is no longer available. So we do have. I'm not picking on.
Sure. No, I just want to explain what the regulation says. So that there's a separate part of the transportation regulation that covers child safety zone reviews intended to address that concern. And it's a point system based upon the safety as determined by the New York State Transportation Department. They look at, you basically weight points. So things that are considered to be less safe, like a lack of a sidewalk, it's a higher point value versus having a sidewalk. Having more traffic on a road gets more points than if there's less traffic on that road. And once you reach a threshold of points, that is what triggers the child safety zone being designated, which basically brings everybody who's in that area, although they're in an eligible mileage zone, they are eligible for transportation because the area meets the threshold set by the state to be a child safety zone. That does not require voter proposition. If the board wanted to designate an area of a child safety zone outside of the point system, the board can effect a voter proposition and voters can vote on it, according to the regulation.
It seems like once the child has to go over train tracks, you score very low on the child safety zone. They gave crossing Wellwood with no stop sign, no traffic light, no crosswalk, only 75 points.
I'm happy to review the child safety zone review that was performed and just make sure it's done accurately. But the regulation is very specific about the number of points that are supposed to be assigned based upon the route that's being reviewed.
Thank you. I have one more.
These are all things that are set by the state. This is not the purview of the Board of Education.
Yeah, well, we'll see how that goes.
I have another.
I'm just in frustration.
I have another. I have not done yet. I'm not done yet.
Go ahead.
So, thank you. We commissioned a study last year to BOCES to evaluate this situation for us. And we all know how much we pay BOCES every year. Thank you, that's great and all of it. No one's seen the study, no one knows where the study is.
I had made a FOIL request, and they had asked me if I could give them a little more detail as to when it actually started. I emailed back and told them it should have been last year, if not sooner.
Well, I appreciate it. Fortunately, we should have just a little bit more authority than a FOIL request as the Board of Education. I just want to know where the BOCES study is, what BOCES did for us, why they did it. And I understand that we were using that to buy us some time last year. But I'd like to know what their input was on it. If we, right? If we did it?
And the areas that they did child studies.
Yeah, well, I'd like to know where the child, because I just can't live with the fact that someone crossing Wellwood Avenue. I can't cross Wellwood Avenue.
Are the nearest,
You can certainly
so
share
the
that.
child is walking out of their door,
Thank you,
that is
sir.
the nearest, not the middle of the street, door to door. That's how it should be, well, that's the
We
nearest.
have 3 different measurements when they gave me.
I know.
But what happens, but door to
It
door,
doesn't
middle of the road,
make that's how it should be.
door to door, middle of the road, that's only a couple feet. But this child safety evaluation was done to the tip of the parking lot. If you go to the front entrance, you've given me my other half mile. So now I'm 2 miles.
One of the things,
Mr. Therefore, are you able to measure from the furthest point of the home as opposed to the center of the street? That might give us a little bit more radius. Were you able to hear me?
We had discussed, and I think, please know, and I know how frustrated you are. I do appreciate that. No, I do. I really don't, because I'm talking to parents every day, and I'm a parent too, and I understand. I understand. But what I will say to you, is, we are taking into consideration what we discussed. One of the things we're seeing, maybe I didn't articulate it well, is there is a possibility that if the board revisits policy to look at the entrance and endpoints, that we have flexibility. We don't have flexibility with the state regs. And to change the mileage distance would require a referendum and a vote by the public. So we're trying to do what's in our limits of control, and that is looking and evaluating entrance and endpoints and whether or not we can modify them. As I said in the beginning, that's going to take us some time. I understand it doesn't resolve the issue right now, but we really want to make sure that we're frustrated and that we're concerned.
Okay, so the entrance.
I just have one question, I'm sorry. Is there a copy of this audit that came up that now took it away from these children? Like, where is this audit that you
Or
talked
can you
about?
go into
Who
more
did it
depth
come
about
from?
the audit?
Who did this?
This audit that
Who
was
did this
found in after
initially?
20 some
Like
odd
she said,
years.
she's been in her home 20 years. I've been in my home.
First of all, is that accurate?
Well, that's
Has
what
it
I'm
been
saying.
over 20 years?
and why last year, as people concerned about being illegal versus legal.
There's an outside contractor who was commissioned by.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
In all earnestness, as you all know, I was not here.
I know.
Over a year ago, there was concerns about whether or not we were in violation. So an outside contractor came in and did an assessment and evaluation of the mileages.
Whose concerns were they? Who brought this? Was it New York State? Like, I just curious
I'm
how
not
this
certain
started.
the genesis of it. I do know that the result and outcome of what the district had done, and we're following through on that. So I don't know where the concerns emanated from. I really can't speak to that. But I do know that they were in existence. There was a decision that was made a year ago. We looked and determined eligibility at that point, and we're following through, and obviously people were notified in February.
No, wait, but last year it was overturned and they decided that they were going to do more studies to determine if this was appropriate. Wait, let me finish. If this was appropriate.
And from what I understand-
Wait, can I?
Okay.
You know, they have not gotten those studies, or they have not, obviously, has anybody on the board seen the study, the BOCES study? Has anyone on the board know that anything has different happened since last year that our children got the bus, the previous year that our children got the bus? What changed?
Money.
Like, what is different that is disrupting over 150 families? And my other question is, how many children benefited from this? Was there any positive of this, or was it just like children removed from the bus, but nobody was benefited from this? Because then I'm not sure why this is continuing also. Why not give the children the benefit of the doubt? There's enough room on the buses. Why is it so important? What is the benefit of taking this away from these
They're
children?
saving money.
Okay, please let him respond. Okay, we've had several emails back and forth, and your emails back to me just give me the same answer. You told me I'm ineligible. I would like to understand how you came to this decision, and like you said, you're new here. So for me, I would think you want to knock this out of the park and be the rock star and make everybody happy, but there's something holding it back. I don't agree. I know that it's money, but I just...
And we have talked several times. The reality is this determination was made over a year ago. It was followed up upon in February. The eligibility was made at that point. We were found to be out of compliance.
But where is the documentation? You can tell me the same thing 100 times. I've requested it.
Absolutely. And I've given you direction on how you could work that.
Okay. Have you seen this documentation?
I have. So then you should have it with you.
Or really, I was going to say, so why can't it be provided?
So guys, we have just one person at a time, so how about this? We have a policy committee. Mrs. Cunningham, Ms. Martin, they're going to review policy. What we can look at is the entranceways, as they stated before. That may affect some of you. Maybe not all of you, but it may affect some of you. So how about we do that now? Take a look at that.
And also just
try to see if...
And when you say that changing that, what method are we using? What is the method that is used to calculate? And I'm not saying giving me a route, just the correct route. I want to know what is the method that is calculated. Is it that method where you put a pin in the middle of the school? So the method technically that you're using, whether you give me a better route or a safe route or a different route, that method from my home to the school says my child should walk through buildings and on people's lawns, correct?
Again, the regulation is for determining eligibility for busing. It's not saying you need to walk that route.
No, but if you have a straight line, people can't walk a straight line in a maze. It doesn't work. There's 26 houses between my house and the middle school for my child to walk through.
That's not how mileage is calculated. It's calculated on the shortest available public route. So
Why when I put in other people's addresses 2 blocks away from me, they still don't get the bus?
This is we're 40 feet, or even let's give you the benefit of the doubt, we're 400 feet. If everybody was as persistent as us and had you come to their home and do this, I have a feeling there would be a lot more discrepancies. But you know what? Nobody has that kind of time and energy. That's why people back down and they just figure it out themselves. And I don't think that's fair. And one more thing. Last year, because they didn't have the study completed and because they didn't have the resources to say this was definitely taken away from us, they reinstated the bus. Why can't you do that until you figure it out again? Why is that so difficult? And please, legal, as you are here, you can respond to that. I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but they keep throwing
I don't like being put on the spot. So,
That's your job.
you know, it is. In terms of studies, if you've had repeated studies done that showed the same exact results, which is my understanding.
No, that's definitely not.
We have 3 different measurements for my own house.
If the studies that were done, I have not seen the studies. My understanding is that the studies were done, then that the study done last year matched the study done the previous year.
But you're not answering all the correct information.
You asked me a question, I'm trying to answer the question.
But you have to use facts. Did you see this report? Do you know for sure that these studies have been done? Can you guarantee that before you answer?
I can't guarantee anything.
Okay. So you're basing your answer on something you don't even know.
Would you like me to respond to the question? Just give me the opportunity. So, in terms of conducting studies, if you've had 2 studies, whether if indeed they are the same results, the same people found ineligible last year were found ineligible now, there comes a time where, as the district acting in an arbitrary or capricious manner, by continually conducting studies in order to grandfather people in, when the Commissioner of Education has held for decades that once you know someone does not fit within the transportation mileage limitations, you are not allowed to grandfather them. That's the answer to the question.
That is, but that's not been proven. That's the problem I'm having. If you can give me that information beyond the shadow of a doubt in a written form that tells me these studies have been done, that it's been consistent for all these years, that this, or however many years you think they've done these studies, then I can understand it a little better, but that's not what anybody can give us. So how are you basing that on something you have yourself taken?
I don't base anything. I advise the board. So, I've done some studies personally. My understanding is that they are consistent.
Listen, and what we'll do now, please, what we can do now is we're going to take a look at a policy, as I mentioned before, and we're going to look at the measurement. where their starting point and where the ending point is. That will make a difference. I'm telling you. When we have our community forum on the 21st, you guys come back, we're going to have a discussion about it. You guys are going to get the report, that child safety report, the HOSIS report. You're going to have it beforehand, so you're going to have a chance to look at it, okay?
Ms. Hoffman?
Now until then, that's
Ms. Hoffman?
time of kids walking.
May I add something?
What's the likelihood of getting a referendum to change the mileage distance?
Oh, forget it.
Into the voters.
You can try it, but no one's going to agree to spend more money.
Well,
But I just have
it's spending more money, but auditing the transportation as well, because I have other things that I know about the transportation that's wasting money. And how many kids are actually not actually on the bus who are paying for the bus right now?
Let the will of the people be heard, and we'll do what we vote. That's fine. That's no problem. I just have one more point here. This is really important, I think.
We've asked about the referendum, and I do want to speak to that. Mr. Lincoln, I want to speak to that. What would require the referendum? Because there is a mechanism for them to referendum.
Yeah, so there's a petition process. The exact numbers of signatures needed depend on the amount of voters in the last election. I don't know that off the top of my head. I believe them in 5%. So put together a proposition. You have to have a cost to the taxpayers in the proposition. That is something that's clear from the commissioner. You can ask that cost from the business office to the extent they can provide it. I'm sure they will, but that proposition needs to have cost, and you would essentially be asking to reduce the mileage limitations, which requires a majority of voters. The caveat is that at the annual election, if the proposition to decrease the mileage passes, it a lot of times will result in you needing a supermajority now to pass your budget, because when the two costs are combined, it pierces the tax cap.
Well, it's also one thing of actually decreasing mileage, but also auditing how the transportation is provided and who actually utilizes transportation, and make it sort of like the lunch system they have now, where people have to opt in to get free or reduced lunches.
That would be part of the proposition. The proposition is solely the mileage
Yeah,
distance.
that's a little different. That's a different. I just want to get one thing, Donald. If the standard, just one second. If the standard is the shortest available public route in making a determination, I would question the fact that it's not an available public route for an 11-year-old to cross DeKalb on Melwood Avenue at rush hour in the morning. We should be allowed to calculate that into how we do distance, the same way we would calculate whether or not a child has to walk past West Gates with cars coming and going instead of crossing over to the sidewalk. We should I would have to discuss this with people, but there has to be a way to calculate this shortest available route has to include safety.
There is a way. You allow the policy committee to determine the safest route instead of the front of the house, the different location to the entrance of the school. A lot of these people would probably qualify.
The safety wasn't the point. It was the shortest available route is the one that we were audited on.
Right. Well, it doesn't have to be that way. Policy committee can
So we have
determine
the
the location of the house as far as going to the location of the school.
So if it's a problem with policy at this point, if we're changing the policy or adjusting the policy so that we're no longer making kids walk across Wellwood Avenue, would that give us the legal authority to suspend the current rules in favor of the old rules until we work this out? Mr. Levine, is that something we can do while we're amending policy to include safety? Because I really can't see a scenario where the state cracks down on us because we're trying to formulate a policy that doesn't have kids walking across Wellwood Avenue in the morning, or Sunrise Highway, or Montauk Highway. There's no crossing roads there.
I'm sorry, Mr. Giuseppe, Mr. Van Wert was also, I got a little crosstalk. Can you repeat your question again?
My question is, while we're adjusting the policy to include shortest available public route, because I really believe it's not an available public route if an 11-year-old has to cross Wellwood Avenue, it's not safe. We're not placing someone in harm while we're doing there's no crossing guard at the Cobb. The crossing guard is at John Street. So if you want to include that into it, you have to go, that child that would walk 2.4 is now like 3.1 miles. So that doesn't include it in that. So if we can include the shortest available public route available, has to include where the crossing guards are and where they aren't. It's not common sense because the policy doesn't reflect it.
And if you ask to get a crossing guard at Harrington, which is where the crosswalk is, and where we're calculated to walk, if you ask for a crossing guard there, you're told that there's not enough foot traffic across there to rationalize a crossing guard. Because who crosses there? It's not
There's no
safe.
stop sign, there's no light.
There's no flashing light, there's no sign in the road, there's nothing.
Children's safety.
It's dark when
And
it's not
it
a
seems to me that
Well,
that
right,
being
but
disregarded completely.
But as you stated in the student transportation regulation form that we are allowed to take, it's to the entrance. So I just need to know, for the high school students on my block, what is the route number and what time do they have to get the bus stop tomorrow morning? Because now we're at almost 2 months to go all the way through your parking lot. Because the child safety evaluation is to the school entrance at the school property at the parking lot in Old Shore Street. Not the way,
But the study
not the way the
is
study was done, they measured it to the parking lot.
Is that true? What's the parking lot?
There's two safety studies, one was from 33rd Street, one was 39th Street. And they're both to outside the Charles Street entrance. They're not to the cafeteria door, which is the door that we're calculating to. And I'm 0.1 miles from it, so.
And 1.42, my neighbor to the, if you're facing my house to the left, is considered 1.39. The one at the end is 1.5. She was not given a bus stop.
Because it's greater than 1.5.
So as I said, I promised I would get you that study and the policy committee to meet, and we're going to have another discussion.
And I respect that, but it's going to take all year.
Yeah, it's not going to take, no, it's not going to
What am I doing
it's not
tomorrow?
going to take all year.
What am I doing tomorrow? What am I doing Friday? What am I doing Monday? Do I not support the hospital system and take my kids to school? Or do I support the hospital system so we can take care of our breast cancer patients? Your choice. It's children's hospital. We're the children's hospital. We all work for Northwell.
What was the answer? As Jackie said, last year, they were allowed to keep the bus while you kick the can to the side. Why can't they do it now? I didn't hear that answer, or maybe
What answer you looking for, Jackie?
last year, they were allowed to keep the bus while we did the study. Why aren't they allowed to keep it now? Well,
We weren't.
Eric?
No.
Yes.
Okay, so we lived in the gray, for the 2021-2022 school year, and you put your blinders on and pretend you didn't hear the whole
But for over 20 years,
22.
or even longer, we have an audit every year. Why did it come up now? Does anybody want to elaborate on that?
Why didn't you see it? They're trying to cut costs.
Okay, so,
No, just one question at a time. Let's elaborate on that. Why was it down now?
I don't know. I
After
don't
over
have
2
the answer to
decades.
your question.
It was founded a
But we
year.
discussed this last week. How could you guys not have looked into this? You know how important it was.
Put it on the agenda.
In all earnestness, we've given you the answer. I know that you don't agree with the answers.
Wait, but you
Yeah.
give us an
It's
answer
something that
without
was
anything to back
Yeah,
it
there's
up.
nothing back up.
We've determined this a year ago. It was determined. And then it was reaffirmed in February that the families were notified. And we were not, and we will tell you that we're not, again, it would be easy for us to grandfather. It is not the right thing to do. It is in violation of state regulations and our policy. And I understand this is becoming a circular discussion. That's the reality of it.
Because you don't have the proper place to measure.
So guys, I just need to move on, because we do have other presentations for this evening. So what I'm telling you is that the policy committee will meet, and we are going to all meet again on the 21st.
Is there a way to get
What
this?
do I do
Now,
between
now,
then and
in
now?
answer to your questions, the board legally can't meet together without making another public meeting.
That is correct.
So, the policy committee can meet together, okay, but the board in its entirety cannot meet.
In emergency meeting situations can be called upon in certain circumstances.
And make emergency situations.
So is what they're saying is that they could be penalized?
Okay. We just wanted to get the policy committee agreed with our thoughts.
I'm on the committee.
Thank you.
I do.
I appreciate
They
it.
do agree. I understand, and I know this is terrible, that you have to wait a little bit longer.
Well, it's
All
not
I'm
a matter of
asking
waiting,
is,
it's just a matter of the families that are being inconvenienced and the issues that we're experiencing. It's not just as easy as, we'll get back to you in 2 weeks. What about personally, us personally? You have a job to get to tomorrow morning. You can't get to the job in time because you have to deal with something like this, which you know that can be resolved. I know it can be resolved, you know it can be resolved.
Okay, I just would like to just make one more statement.
please, if it could be just brief, because we do have a couple of.
One thing was, we were here last meeting. We talked. You offered me your cell phone number, and I said no, because I have complete confidence you were going to look into this and come back to us next month, or with this meeting, and we're going to have some resolution or some answers. And yet nobody on the board here can present any documentation, information, or anything to clarify why the study has been done or anything, but yet still we're being punished and taking the bus away until you can provide those things for us. And my last question is on notice, and I appreciate that you did say that they were sent out in February, but can you guarantee that every parent received that? And is there legally any notification process that needs to be done?
There's no legal notification process. The district sends out notices that are reasonably calculated to advise the recipients of the notice.
So
I
it's
believe they're
not-
sent out, Mr. Van Wert, by regular mail, certified mail.
By regular mail.
Which is my, if something's so important, don't you think that that should have required a signature? Because when I went on the portal, as I sent you the photo, my child is in grade 8, and on August 22nd, when I went on the portal, it said, Jace Robert Harris, grade 8, bus 12th Street, bus home 12th Street. I relied on that information. And you don't know that I got that letter, or that I knew that that letter didn't dictate what was on the portal. Maybe things changed. But that's the information that was there, and that's what people relied on as well. So what dictates? Why is it that our report cards are on the portal, and everything you want us to do is electronic, but no one got an email notification about this change? And it wasn't updated on the portal until days before school, which again, you're scrambling to get your child to school safely. And I just don't understand as a district how that could be so far off and be okay. Be okay. You told me it was for the wrong year, but my child is in grade 8. That's the right year. So I have proof that says he got a bus August 22nd of 2022 for the following school year. But yet, you guys tell me no. What am I supposed to rely on? A letter I may or may not have gotten, or information that I use every single day on that portal for my child's education? What would you do?
It's not fair, because you know that we've had conversations with your family that have been ongoing for several months now. So,
What is that? I'm not saying me. Maybe it was somebody else who didn't receive the notice.
when you asked about yourself, and that's what I'm.
No, I didn't. If you read the email, I asked you to provide all of the signatures of people. Provide me something that says that people got this notice. I mean, I just think that it's crazy that one thing can come in the mail and then something else can be on the district website that you should be accurate. But how do I know what dictates? That's what I want to know. How do I know what dictates? Do I trust the school portal? Do I trust my child's report card's going to be correct? Do I trust his schedule's going to be okay?
I think in the end, if there's confusion, do what you did. You contacted school administration.
I just have one question, guys, please, I gotta really move on, because we have just one last question.
If the kid shows up at the school bus, is it illegal for the bus driver to leave the child there and not transport them to the school?
Not if they're not eligible for transportation.
So you're saying that if a parent has to go to school, has to go to work, and their kid now cannot get to school, that's okay?
I'm not saying it's okay or not okay. You asked a question about legality. Legally, if a student is not entitled to be on that bus and a parent puts the student in a position to go on a bus, they are not
They're in a position to go to work.
legally entitled to attend according to the district. That is not illegal. There is no liability to the bus driver or district.
Okay.
If you send out on the
We need
bus,
to move on to the next.
you can have that same on the back.
That's why a child gets killed. They walk, and that bus driver don't pick them up. I'm going to leave that bus driver.
What can legally happen to the district if they put these kids on the bus and ignore it? What would happen? I said, what could legally happen if you did what you did last year with these children on the bus?
What, put them on the bus?
Yeah, what would happen? New York State would do what? What does past precedent say?
So if somebody filed a report, what is it, an appeal to the commissioner, we could get in trouble because we would be.
For putting the children on the bus?
We run a risk.
Okay, no, by trouble, there's obviously past precedent on this, no? What would happen?
We can match on
A
funds.
fine?
We lose eight.
We can lose like 60% of our aid.
And how many times is that happen in your life?
Not gonna be able, that's why we need to clarify. Okay. You know what I'm saying? We get in trouble, what is the trouble?
Okay, moving on to staff.
Go ahead. It doesn't affect my child, I'm just asking, like, I know these people are looking for an answer.
They should get it.
So if we're going to conclude the buses, could you just give us a date and time that we will have some sort of information as far as what the policy?
Or September 21st. September 21st.
Wait, what is September 21st?
September 21st.
The next one that is out.
It's true.
So just to clarify, we do have a community forum for the 21st. I know that will be presenting information on that.
So you're all good.
We're moving to two presentations.
Is there a reason why the committee can't meet now?
Committee?
No, they have to vote. Policy committee?
Mr. Delaney, do you want to talk about the legality of convening a policy committee at a board meeting?
The policy committee is going to meet, I promise you, okay?
But we don't have 2 weeks left.
Okay, so as soon as we get clarification from the policy committee, I will set up a meeting before the 21st. I don't know what day it's going to be, because it's going to depend on how fast the policy committee can get back to us.
So all
That is the best I can do for you.
Hold
Plus,
on a
I will
minute.
get you a copy of the BOCES study.
Okay, and I want the initial audit that came up, whatever amount of years
Whatever
ago.
information I have that I can get available, I will give to you. Everybody, okay?
Mrs. Hoffman, I know you're trying to move on. I just wanted to talk to you about if committee meets, say tomorrow morning, can you bring out a parent square to the public, because you do have parents that are in limbo currently. We can't have this for 2 weeks. As a board member, as a parent, I think we all can agree here, 2 weeks is quite a long time. So if Mary Ellen and I meet tomorrow, we present something to our board via email, via phone call, via meeting, whatever the case may be, are we able to send them a parent square to let them know? So we would have to have a public session, correct? I'm just asking a question. Please, Mrs. Hoffman, I only want an answer from you.
Yes, if the policy committee recommends policy changes to the board must adopt it at a public meeting.
But we can have a special meeting, yes.
But she just said we're not opposed to that.
Okay.
Okay?
Wait, you said you can have a meeting, but it can be before the 21st, right?
Yes, that's what we just said, yeah.
No,
Originally,
I'm talking about a committee meeting is going to happen maybe, let's say, tomorrow. But then how soon can the public meeting
so the committee is going to meet as soon as possible. As soon as they have it hashed out and understand what they're trying to do, what we're trying to do, is accommodate as many of our families as possible without being in violation of the state law. Okay? Once that's complete, and the board has seen that, we will schedule a public session to vote on that, which hopefully would mean that many of you will have your buses restored as soon as possible and not waiting until the 21st, which is what you were asking a little bit earlier, the gentleman to have. Right? That's what we're trying to do. Does that make sense? It's the best we can do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Davis. Thank you. We're transitioning to two presentations. One, I will give just discussing the Dignity for All Students Act and some of the actions that we've taken within the district in the last month or two. And then we have Mr. Salamani, who is from the Long Island Council Against Bullying, to talk a bit about a potential partnership between the Lindenhurst schools and his organization. The genesis of this, and I think this is the most important thing, is when I started, I outlined an entry plan, and I listed that I would listen, lean, and learn, and I would wait time before we set some broad goals and agendas. However, it did become very apparent, even with my entry here, pre-entry here, that there was concerns about aggressive behavior and bullying. So, though I wish to outline the goals for the district, or draft goals for the district, based on a lot of the community meetings and meetings we will continue to have with families and staff, sometime in the winter, some things can't wait. And we know that there was a sense of urgency for us to be able to look at aggressive behaviors, look at bullying, and to consider what we need to do. Looking at the beginning of this, we wish to just first recap DASA. It's a term that's often bandied about. It's about 10 years old, and we recognize that not a lot of people fully understand what it is and what it incorporates and encompasses. So, of course, this won't work. Can you hear me? Yeah. Work with this? All right, so looking at DASA, the evolution of the law. Yes, please. That's easier that way. Thank you. So DASA became law in July of 2012. Before DASA, there was no state law prohibiting harassment, intimidation in school based on specific characteristics. So it was very broad. As you'll see in the next slide, we'll give you the characteristics that were outlined in DASA as that needed to be incorporated into policy and practice within school systems. It was motivated by the research showing that there was a rise in harassment and bullying in schools and the connection of disruption of this to teaching and learning. DASA prohibited bullying, harassment, and discrimination under protected classes, including sex, gender identity, sexual orientation, weight, disability, race, color, religion, religious practice, national origin, and ethnicity. And that is whether it's real or perceived. So one of the things, and this really kind of talks a bit about transgender students, but it's broader than when you talk about other students, is it involves a person's actual or perceived sex. So in the case of gender identity or expression, students that were harassed by physiological birth or how they identified, orientation was still protected as well. So again, one of the things we run into is, well, he's not this religion. It doesn't matter, perceived or not. If you're intimidating, harassing, or bullying based on a protected class, then it's something that we had to address. How far does it go? It's on school grounds, and prior to DASA, the school had the right and responsibility to intervene whenever any behavior occurred on school grounds, on school buses as well, and at school functions. So after school activities, sports, field trips, all fall under the umbrella of DASA. However, what was very different was that if it was off school property and would foreseeably create a risk of the student in the educational disruption in the school environment through threats, intimidation, or abuse, if they reached school grounds. And that's different. Prior to 2012, behavior that occurred off school grounds, even if there was a material connection, oftentimes was not something that was subject to discipline or intervention. DASA said, no, it's all of our responsibility, and we need to connect it. So when we look here, what are harassment that would create a risk of substantial disruption within the school environment? This extends to cyberbullying, which occurs when harassment or bullying occurs through any form of electronic communication. So it includes harassment or bullying, as I talked about, through cyberbullying, hurtful, rude, mean text messages or emails, spreading rumors or lies through email or social networking sites, creating or sharing pictures, websites, social media profiles, including fake ones, that embarrass, humiliate, and make fun of others, threats made online, and any harassment made by email, instant messages, blogs, and websites and on. One of the complications with cyberbullying, which we run into as school officials, and I'll talk to in a minute, is the ability to identify and to verify those users who are behind some of these behaviors. And that makes it really complicated for us. And again, I'm going to talk in a minute about some things that we're looking at doing. Be able to bridge the divide between what we have and the information we have, what we can do, and what occurs off campus, which is sometimes very difficult for us to bridge. So, discipline for off-campus social media use. Student may be disciplined for the conduct, including the use of social media or other electronic communication, where conduct may endanger the health and safety of other students within the educational system or adversely affect the process. So again, if there's a commotion, if there is something that is a material connection to the school, then we have the right. Students do have First Amendment rights, and they certainly have the right to free speech, but when that is discriminatory, harassing, bullying, targeting, then that's where it ends. And it's something that, as a school, we intervene. A little bit of a distinction, because I think sometimes there's confusion. What is conflict? What is bullying? And I'm giving you two definitions. One comes from stopbullying.gov, which is also with the U.S. Department of Education, backed by that as well. And it talks a bit about when there's bullying is not when there's no power imbalance, when students have no difference in terms of their social power, physical power, or anything. If there's a fight, if they have a disagreement or an argument, oftentimes conflict resolution or putting two kids together to talk about things results in a good outcome. And oftentimes that would be students who had previous positive relationships. You're not looking at the imbalance where a student may have a separate social status or there might be multiple students ganging up on another student. And if you look at that, the definition on the right, it defines bullying as aggressive behavior that is intentional, involves an imbalance of power strength. It's generally repeated over time. It doesn't mean it always has to be. Okay, it can be one or two instances, but generally it is repeated over time. So that leads to our obligations. What are our obligations as a district? And this is important because I think in the past, and this was the impetus of this, we weren't as a district, and again, prior to my arrival, meeting our obligations in terms of reporting. And that's something that has been remediated and will not continue. When we look at that, if a staff member witnesses harassment, bullying, and discrimination or receives a complaint from another student about harassment, they have to promptly orally report it to the principal, superintendent, or designee within 1 school day, and then make a written report within 2 school days. So again, if a student comes to a teacher or comes to an administrator, that has to be reported within the time frame that's outlined. DASA and board policy, and I know that oftentimes people are afraid, is there going to be retaliation? What if my child speaks up? DASA and board policy prohibits that action. Under DASA, all school employees are required to promptly report harassment, bullying, and other discrimination. All reports must be promptly and thoroughly investigated, and if found, it shall be remediated consistent with district policy. Complaints should be treated as confidential and private to the extent possible. DACs or Dignity Act coordinators may conduct investigations and can serve as a resource to staff on procedures. So every building has a Dignity Act coordinator. These are people who are specially trained in investigation and reporting when we're looking at violations of Dignity Act. Each school has a DAC and the district has a central office DAC. Investigations must be thorough. They can be building level or district level, depending on the situation. Parties are advised of the results of the investigation, and this is something that the district did not always do in the past, whether it was founded or unfounded. And again, that is something that's been remediated and has been addressed, but I know that that was a concern. Offer the parent or guardian targeted student opportunities to participate in the process as appropriate. Follow up on an investigation, monitor, intervention may be required to address the harassment, bullying, or discrimination. It's not recurring following any remedial corrective actions. And that's also a responsibility. Look, when we look at this, we have students who are struggling. So intervening is not enough. We have to monitor. We have to follow up. There are students who exhibit the bullying behavior. We have to intervene on their behalf too. And not intervene so much as we need to address that behavior so it doesn't persist and to get underneath, get to the root of that. Okay? Mm-hmm. All right.
I don't get, they have to go on here and do the form and whatever.
I can't talk about, I don't know in terms of, and we can talk about your individual case, and I will stay at the end of this and certainly talk to you. I don't know of any of that happening this year. I know that that's something that has been addressed in the past, and I don't. If I may.
As my daughter did today?
Excuse me.
Okay.
Again, I can't speak to what's happened. I'm telling you where we are going
Oh,
forward.
yeah.
But I understand, and I will be here, and I will talk to any one of you if you have those
My son
concerns.
cried the night before school started.
I'm sorry to
because
hear
he
that.
doesn't want to go.
I'm sorry to hear that.
And you
again-
turned around and told me a couple of weeks ago, you
Okay.
rest assured exclusively told me that the child
That's
would be
right.
away from my daughter.
Mhm.
Guess what? You lied,
I
and so
don't-
did the middle school.
I don't know what you're
So
talking
you'll
about.
be here as my
Again,
attorney.
so I have to ask, if we can conclude the presentation, I will gladly speak to any one of you. I don't know about the
It's
situation.
bullshit.
So-
Put it in Giordano's hands.
Okay.
He's not here. What are you doing? Nothing.
I
Guys,
don't know what you're talking
if
about.
we could please just finish the presentation. We have the representative from Long Island Bullying Coalition. Please let him speak also. You guys will get a chance to ask questions.
So going back, the primary focus of CASA is prevention. And when you look at that, there are corrective measures that we can have. There's remediation. There's progressive discipline. If the behavior rises to the level of a criminal act, then authorities will be notified. And merely disciplining the offenders, as I said before, may not be enough. And we have to intervene. Sometimes it's a school-wide intervention.
That's happening. Nothing's going to change. The parents don't
Again, can I just ask, please? I will listen to anyone who wishes to speak. I will stand here, I don't care until what time. I will absolutely listen to you. I can't speak to situations that I'm not aware of. So I will certainly speak to you, and I would just ask for the respect to finish this, and then I will speak with you, I assure you. And the reason we're presenting here is because we recognize that this is a source of frustration and pain. And I know that parents who have come to me, and someone here can attest to that. I will meet with you, I will sit down with you, and we will work on this. I can't speak to last year, okay? I really can't. I'm looking at what we're doing going forward. We are providing a training and retraining for all our DACs. We have updated our district website where you can report on DASA. I think we're on the next slide. We reviewed our alignment and systematic supports, which include our social emotional curriculum. We have things such as Sanford Harmony, push-in lessons, SEL traits. We have structures like buddy benches where kids are invited to sit with buddies or people that they don't know. We have peer mediation, student ambassadors. We have kindness week, mental health support. We also have 43 social workers, psychologists, and guidance counselors district-wide. There is a bevy of mental health support here. That doesn't mean that we don't want to do more. It doesn't. We are identifying teams and providing training in restorative practices or responsive classroom. Restorative practices really talks about and helping kids to understand the impact of their behavior on the community and how they have to make it right with the community. All right, discipline isn't enough. However, accountability for your role in the community is an important part of restorative practices. So you damage school equipment, you have to understand who you impact, you have to own that, and we have to figure out a way for you to make restitution beyond the consequence. Responsive classroom is an elementary framework that teaches kids at an early age resiliency skills, self-advocacy, identifying who the people are that they can go to for help and support. So it's looking at systemically, how do we build those skills in all of our students? That's how you move a good majority. One of the other things, in addition to providing training, is we are going to form a coalition. And we are going to ask for several community members to be a part of that. What we're looking to do is to build a coalition to bring all of our resources together. It's not just about bullying. We have aggressive behaviors. We have chemical dependency. We need to bring community members and coalitions like Lindy Cares, Town of Babylon, law enforcement to the table so we can talk about what's available to us and to make an impact for change. And I think when you see that, we will start to be able to publicize resources that parents can have. We will be able to look at the structures that we have and set goals and objectives for us to be able to address the issues that remain. Any questions about the presentation before I introduce someone? Yes, right here.
Yeah, I have a question. I understand they have, the list of, like, if the student does something.
they have a concrete plan of the consequence for each certain action that takes place?
I think it's a fair question, but just like every circumstance is different, every student is different. I don't know if a student is late 3 times, we always give X, right? Because sometimes that student struggles in the morning or has IBS or whatever the case is, right? So I think if you look at it as being black and white, we sometimes can't make adjustments for kids' needs and abilities. There are sometimes kids who have special needs that may not, it may be very difficult for them to do certain things. So if you heighten the consequence all the time, you keep continuing to heighten the consequence and you're pushing the kid out of the system.
Yeah, but that's why the child has.
Right, so there's not my point is that when you take into consideration different needs, different children, different age levels, it's very difficult to have a black and white
But
list.
let me, again, you weren't here that shit, I'm just moving forward, where the parents filling out 15 DASA reports, and there's no consequences for any single one of them. Moving forward with the new plan, is this going to be taken into account when actually I had to remove my daughter from the school district because of the bullying, and now I have to pay $11,000 for private school while still paying $15,000 in living wage taxes? Is there something that's going to be done about that?
Yeah, I think, listen, all the reports have to be responded to, right? And that's something that I know that is a significant change that has to.
Yeah, but 15 DASA reports, and not one of those 15
You know what I got
had
from one
any
of my reports?
consequences?
They
That's
failed my
unacceptable.
I can, listen, again, I'm willing to
And
speak
my
with
daughter
any one
has
of
an
you.
IEP, just to add that.
And I'm willing to speak with any one of you. I don't know your circumstances, so it's hard to talk about that in a public meeting, but I will meet with any one of you, and I will remain here after Mrs. Solomon presents.
Just ask a question. How far back, can you go back into the records to see if a DASA report was actually filed? Can my DASA report be pulled up from
Yes.
previous years? Because we filed one in 2015.
Okay. I just, again, being new, going back 7 years, I
I'm
have
not
to.
sure, I'm not
Right,
with whether you know if it's
right, I
in the
don't know the
system.
answer off the top of my head. I want to
Okay,
say
so
yes,
if we
but I
can
want to
find
get.
that out, because since 2015, I've never received the DASA report. I've been up to the school to Nacarado 100 times since then. I have 4 kids in the district. I'm on my last kid, still waiting for the DASA report.
Right, and again, if you want to remain behind me, you can speak about that.
I just want to see it. At this point, it don't matter. My kids got a career. But I want to know if it's actually. I just want to know that it was actually done and that I'm not the idiot here thinking it was never done.
Thank you.
Harassment.
I'd like to introduce one of the organizations that we're looking to partner with that we think is going to be wonderful support. Should we go forward? Mrs. Solomon from the Long Island Counseling Against Bullying. I'm going to be your down in white. So you let me know.
Thank you. The bravery was increasing as I was sitting here. Can you hear me? Is this on? Okay. Good evening to Mr. Davidson, Mrs. Hockman, members of the board, and of course to the members of the community. My name is Joe Salamone, and I'm the founder and executive director of the Long Island Coalition Against Bullying. Before I dive into the presentation this evening, I wanted to share a little bit about me and the journey to arriving here tonight. When I started in the middle school, I began being bullied as the new student in a new town. The tactics and the aggressors may have changed, but throughout it all, the constant remained the same, which was my pain. The relentless behavior almost entirely through high school. There were many motivations, but there were also many reasons that I was able to overcome it, and in turn, be able to, so many years later, turn the negative into the positive actions. I share that with you all first, because I want you all to understand how serious I personally and my organization take the issue, both in helping those struggling with it and its impact, as well as assisting those who seek to combat it. The second reason is because of the complexities that the issue itself represents, like the layers of an onion, and the understanding that there's no single measure, no silver bullet, no single initiative that can or will be taken that will eradicate it. It is one that requires the efforts of a multitude of people at numerous levels of school and community to bring about a change. Having spoken to members of this community ahead of tonight's presentation, both students and parents, as well as member of the school district, both at the board, the cabinet, and building levels, I'm excited to see the commitment to moving forward together. And I do believe that our blueprint, which I'll lay out now, is an excellent first step. So a little bit about us, first of all, is we're a 501c that was founded in 2013, and largely it's operated by volunteers comprising clinicians, educators, and business professionals. The overall mission of the organization itself is to emphasize the importance of a bully-free community on the island through education, increased awareness, and therapeutic outlets. Now, obviously, as an organization, we provide immediate awareness. It's in the name. Obviously, it's very clear. Actually go about doing it. So we break it into 4 pillars: advocacy, personal development, school assistance, and community outreach. Advocacy is very easy. We are an organization that allows the community to reach out to us directly if there is an issue and work with the family on a very granular grassroots level to figure out potential solutions. This does not mean that we immediately take the side of the family and go against the school district. It does not mean that we go against the family in favor of defending a school district. We are a truly neutral party. However, while we are on the phone with families listening to what's going on in their lives, that now spills over into the personal development bucket. What do we actually do to get involved with the family? The younger kids we like to send care packages to, which we call smile packages. It acts as 2 things. The first is it's a good opportunity to just put a random smile on the kid's face when they're living through a time when they don't have an awful lot to smile about. Secondarily, it also provides an opportunity as a gateway to build the conversation more and break down the barrier to a conversation that needs to be had so that proper information can be identified. Below that, subsidized therapy, we actually have been building a network of mental health professionals so that we can get kids the mental health resources that they need to overcome the challenges. This applies to kids who are accused of being bullies as well, should those families come forward. In addition to connecting a family to a mental health professional, we will also help you pay for it. We arm families with $500 in subsidies to assist in a case where it's covering a copay or an out-of-pocket expense. Below that, and kind of along the same line, tutoring, karate, dance, equestrian therapy, art therapy, anything that a kid could utilize that will help them rebound and make it through their situation utilizing things that they like. We can connect them to, and again, arm them with the family with the ability to pay for it. School assistance, I'm going to skip because a lot of that is what I'm going to go over in a moment. Community outreach, we use several advisory committees. We have a junior and a youth board that help us actually build policy that we are then going to bring to a school district. What are we doing? We're asking the kids, help be a part of your own solution. We give out thousands of dollars in scholarships every year. Our one single scholarship, the spring scholarship, is $5,000 in itself. The Community Outreach Fund helps school clubs if they need help, wanting to get an anti-bullying initiative in their school, but they don't know where they're going to get the money. They could apply to us and really grow their idea. We're proposing doing with inside the school building, but we do it with the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts, things like that. So our impact over the last 9 years is we have the hotline I mentioned is monitored and staffed by volunteers from Cohen Children's Medical Center, and it advises hundreds of families a year. The in-school program executions are in Sayville, Massapequa, Long Beach, and a plethora of other school districts. Over $10,000 in scholarship money awarded every year. Collaborations with pediatric institutions like Northwell Health, PM Pediatrics, and allied physicians groups. And we've partnered with both Nassau and Suffolk County governments and local municipalities to enact local initiatives. NassauStopBullying.gov is a resource website that points specifically to each school district's DASA coordinator so that it bridges the communication gap with the community. That exists because our organization wrote the law for the county. So the actual plan itself is built around education and awareness. But you can't just leave it as simple as that. So who is the education and the awareness specifically targeting? It's broken down into 3 specific focus groups: faculty and staff, students, and parents and the overall community. The overall goal is to increase education relating to bullying and its impacts, not just the bullying itself, but what can unaddressed bullying actually lead to in the future, both for the person on the receiving end as well as the person who's actually demonstrating the behavior. Creation of a collaborative partnership, not just a unilateral canned approach, this is our offering, take it or leave it. One of the things that we particularly pride ourselves on is the ability to come together with the school district and say, listen, this is our foundation. What are you already doing that we actually can enhance? And what can we together create? And then staff professional development. The idea would be to take teachers, teacher aides, and support staff and give them specific learning materials about understanding the power that a single individual has in a particular individual's life. I mentioned earlier that my specific situation in the 9th grade almost cost me my life. The reason that I did not choose to go forward with my plan of suicide was because of a teacher who did not know what was going on because it was the first week of school, it was the 9th grade, she didn't know me from anybody. She noticed something about me and took an extra step. And that extra step is why I get to stand here and talk to all of you. So it's reminding professionals inside of a school building of the actual importance of the impact that they can make, even if they don't realize at the time that they're making it. That teacher who saved me didn't know until 12 years after the fact the impact she actually had. It wasn't something she learned immediately. So in a lot of times, you're not aware of the impact you're having. So reminding them of that. Examining, as Mr. Davidson alluded to earlier, the relationship between bullying and conflict, how they are the same, how they are different, and where is the overlapping gray area. And how do you intervene, evaluate, and resolve? To that point, there have already been discussions with myself and Mr. Van Wart about working toward finding dates for those activities to take place, and that's still under discussion, but we think we've honed in on particular dates in question, assuming this is approved by the board, of course. Further tips on creating a closer relationship with students and forming the importance of that bond and getting to understand it, as well as the outline that was already given to you tonight about the understanding of DASA and its requirements. From the students, the approach that we think is very important to take is a full K through 12 age-appropriate, applicable program, not just focusing on one particular group, although I will say I think it would be safe to hone in on one particular to start. Push-in style conversations with favorable dialogue over a lecture. Kids do not respond to putting 500 kids in an auditorium and giving them the same conversation year after year. What they do respond to is the idea of going inside their classroom where they're not expecting you to be and actually engaging in a back and forth conversation with them so that what you say might actually be received and conversed with. Discussion of what bullying is, its types, and where to seek help. More often than not, in a lot of cases, and there have been school districts that we have worked in where they have come to us at the end of a day and said, we had 4 kids come up to us today and say, I'm a bully and I didn't even know it. Because in a lot of ways, they're looking at the same type of things all the time about what makes a bully or what makes somebody engage in that kind of behavior. So understanding the impacts that bullying has long term. It's not you get your diploma, I lived through pain, I have my diploma now, it's all over because the door's closed behind me. I have severe anxiety. I hate talking in public, although in my brain I think I'm doing a pretty good job of it now. However, though that all dates back to what I lived through. It's you as close the door and you move on. Understanding the idea that those impacts have importance. And, of course, activities stressing foundational aspects of respect and empathy. If there is one thing that I believe that the pandemic has caused us, it was a complete abandonment of what basic and fundamental respect and empathy is. And I'm not just talking, forgive me for being so bold, I'm not just talking about kids to kids. So, with that said, I think we need to return to curriculum that stresses the importance of those 2 fundamental aspects. You don't need to like everybody, but you do have to respect everybody. Special sports teams discussions that focus on leadership both on and off the field. We have plenty of teams. Every school district has them. You are not just a captain of your team only when you're on the field. You are a captain when you're in the building. If somebody on your team is going through something, part of being a leader of that team is potentially trying to help them. So engaging at the sports level as well. Lastly, parents in the community. Understanding what bullying is and what it is not. How should a parent appropriately respond if they are concerned? Of course, passions run high here when it comes to this. Oh, listen, nobody more angry than my mother when she found out about all this. She would have good company in this room. However, there are ways of going about it where there's positives that can be gained much quicker. Empathetic listening strategies, properly engaging kids in conversations about bullying, not sitting them down, interrogating them, and asking an endless list of questions of, are you being bullied? Have you ever seen bullying? No. Make it more open-ended, make it dialogue, make it conversational. Most kids are not, and this is painting with a broad brush, but most kids are not going to just offer this information. It's reliant upon all of us to observe behavior that might say, hey, something's going on there, what is it? And then overview of the Dignity Act and taking a deeper dive into what Mr. Davidson was going on earlier. On the screen here, the fine print is a little small. However, I included this in here so that you can see some of the results that we have actually had. These are exit surveys that were taken from students ages 11 to 18. They were completely voluntary and anonymous. We don't do it with the younger kids. This is all electronic, so generally speaking, we only give it to kids who have their phone out during the day or who we've gotten to get their phone during the day. However, what we are particularly proud of is in every category, we get a 5 out of 5. Now, again, you all know your kids. We all know kids. If they have an opinion, they're not going to be shy about sharing it. So we are particularly proud of the idea that we can go into a classroom and get a 5 out of 5 and get the type of scores that we do. Like I said, again, the couple of assumptions is that it's only middle and high school students. The classes, depending on the time, etc., if we ran over, didn't have the ability to participate. And again, it was completely voluntary. The particular thing about this data, though, is that we share similar data at the conclusion of our programs with. Hope that worked out. It was, well, let's actually see how it resonated. So similar with building administration. Lastly, specific initiative services and recommendations that I think complement what we're talking about here tonight. I've spoken to Mr. Nacarado several times, Mr. Caravana as well, about actually planning on going inside the classroom, inside the middle school. One of the things we talked about was creation of a tip guide for not only the community but for the students about how to recognize it amongst your friends, what it looks like, how to help them, how to help yourself, but most importantly, a list of key individuals within the respective building of whom they can go to. Particularly one of the recommendations I said was over-communicate. How many of the kids actually know who their psychologists are? One of the recommendations we made is, why don't the psychologists go on a little road show? Knock on the door of the classroom in the beginning of the year, 5 minutes, I'm so-and-so, this is where my office is, if you ever need me, this is who I am and where to find me. Doesn't need to be more than that. But now they put a name to a face and they know another resource that exists. The supplemental services that I outlined earlier, the ability to say, if there's a Lindenhurst parent or going through a problem, here's LICAP's line, give them a call. Accessing them to the mental health resources that we can provide that supplement the work that's going on in the district. And of course, the personal development programming as well. Participation in the youth board, allow the students to have a voice in their own solutions. They're part of the problem, let them be a part of their own solution. We've got things coming out as far as Educator of the Month Award, where we are going to highlight a specific teacher nominated by the community or educator, could be a principal, whatever the case is, that takes an active interest in this and make sure that they know that their abilities inside the classroom or inside their building are not being unseen. Additionally, Community Leadership Award scholarship programs for students who exhibit outstanding character. It's a non-educational award. We give thousands of dollars a year out in Sayville, for example, to kids in every building for doing nothing other than observing strong character. And then again, communication with all stakeholders and increasing the availability to existing resources. As Mr. Davids had said, a lot of the resources are already here, but it's making sure that everybody ad nauseum knows that they're existing and where to find them and how to access them. So with that said, that is the last of what I hope was not too overwhelmingly boring, and I would be happy to field any questions, should there be any.
Please
Yes?
know that full
Presentation will be published on my website, so a lot of that information will be available, most likely by tomorrow, but definitely by the
Thank you. Thank you very much. Great presentation. I just had a couple of questions for you.
Sure.
On one of your
Slides, you
slides,
talked about local municipality laws. You made a reference to the one in Nassau County.
Yeah.
One of the things I see as a huge problem, and I would suspect that some parents would as well, is the out-of-school bully. The bully that does something by someone's house or, you know, out in the community. Is there any possibility, have you seen any municipalities actually pass laws that address that specific issue? When it's not in the school, but it's serious bullying that's going on, and it doesn't rise to the occasion of being, let's call Suffolk First Precinct and have a criminal complaint?
Short answer, I have not. However, we are actually looking into working with some of them. I am not really at liberty in such a public forum to state more than that, but on the record, no, as far as I'm aware of today, but we are looking to try to change that.
Okay, because I think, I don't think anyone's going to disagree that there's sort of a vacuum. There's like one area of behavior that, again, it doesn't rise to the criminal. It's not in the school and it's sort of outside the purview, but it's happening and there's real impact that needs to be addressed.
Yes, I agree.
So I just had a couple other questions. So you mentioned about, you know, showing students the full impact of bullying. Have you found in your studies that actually showing a bully what the full impact is on the victim, on the, you know, on their ecosystem, have you actually seen behavior shifts based on that?
I would say yes and no. Some of that, what I didn't share before, I personally am the one that executes a lot of the programs inside the classroom. So I do draw based on personal experiences to kind of make it a little bit more realistic for them. One of the things that I also do will share a story about the person that I call kind of the chief architect of my bullying. He actually approached my father 4 years. Tapped my father on the shoulder, and my dad said, you know, who are you? And he told him, and he said, you know, I was never very nice to Joe. In fact, I was never nice to Joe. And I just wanted you to know that all these years later, I never forgot that, and I'm glad that I got the opportunity to actually apologize for it. So I'll use that story, you know, when applicable. As far as walking them through any type of, you know, kind of full circle, it is a little difficult to do that. That story tries to be as close to it as I can, just to emphasize the fact that it's not just the person on the receiving end that carries it, it's also the person who did it.
Cool. And also, you mentioned having your push in classrooms as opposed to the auditorium, which it's great, because let's face it, at the middle school, high school level, you know, an assembly is basically 40 minutes for a kid to play on their phone.
Yeah.
So we get that. But is there a way when you actually do these things, you know, in the classroom, and I hate to use the word targeted, but if you know, for example, that in a class that you're going to go into third period on Tuesday, there are 2 known bullies in that classroom, and you can kind of know what the situation is ahead of time, is there a way that you can actually do that and then maybe not specifically tailor your message, but tailor your message a little bit to reach specifically to those students without them realizing, hey, they're talking about me?
Yes, yes to both, actually. Usually what we do before we enter a classroom is we will meet with the building level administration to specifically say, are you having any specific problems, so that we can work those specific problems into what's going to go into the classroom, so that they do feel like wow, he actually knows what's going on here. Prior to going into a classroom, it has happened, and we do welcome it, if a teacher happens to pull us aside before we get started and say, listen, you know, last 2 kids, you know, 3rd row, 4th seat, you know, things, and it's gotten that specific before. So yes, we can tailor, the message indirectly but directly.
Okay, and there's two last questions. So you mentioned also parental engagement.
Yes.
And we do our, parent universities and stuff. And actually, one of the parents brought it up before. It might have been during the bus thing or during Mr. Davidson's DASA presentation. But do you discuss any potential parental consequences for the parents of bullies? Not just, hey, your child's a bully, they're doing bad things, they should stop. But specifically, hey, if your child does X, you might be responsible. The consequences for it are Y. Because let's face it, there's a lot of parents that either refuse to admit that their child's doing this, or they know it, but they just don't care enough because it doesn't impact them.
So yes, we have discussed that. We've mentioned it before. Certain school districts are willing to take other actions, it depends on the respective school district, but that is something that we definitely agree with. There does need to be a little bit of, does not already exist. I mean, parents can be sued civilly for the repercussions of what their kids are. Just because they're under 18 doesn't mean that somehow their hands are no longer involved in it. But yes, we have looked into and had discussions with districts before about incorporating some kind of parental involvement into restorative practices. If the parent agrees to do X, maybe a suspension day will be shaved off, certain things like that. Educationally component as far as, bullies 9 out of every 10 are not doing something because they're terrible people. Something in their life is not, 2 plus 2 is not adding up for whatever reason. And part of the educational component is making the parents understand, something's not right. And a lot of times, unfortunately, doing that does kind of expect a mirror to be shown up to that respective parent about why their kid's actually doing it, and the parent needs to accept responsibility for why that's happening, which is why it becomes a little difficult. But the short answer to your question is yes.
Excellent. Last question. We know surveys are great. The data that they get is valuable to figure out what's going on in the community. A big concern for us in the schools is anonymity of those surveys, whether or not they're age appropriate, and whether or not, quite frankly, the parents are okay with it. How do you address that?
Before we go in, going to take, it's given to the building level administration, and they can put it out to the community. For example, the district that we just did this with most recently, Massapequa, their 9th graders, before we went in with the survey, made aware that their kids are going to be asked the following questions. Do you have any objections to it? If they did, it was completely optional. They did not have to take it. Okay. As well as, in addition to that, we were required to share the information with them. If we were not, we always do this anyway, but it was stipulated that if we were not willing to share the responses to those surveys, that we could not do it, which we're fine with doing.
Cool. Fair enough. Thank you very much.
Yep, go ahead.
Great segue, though, because I was thinking the same exact thing. I think you mentioned the consequences. What balance do you propose between restorative practices and alternate education? So one of the things that I've learned is the same 5 kids. It's the same kids over and over again. And I get it. We're here to educate and improve them, but at some point, don't we have like a crossing line where we go, okay, listen, the entire school can't adapt to offset the behavior of these alpha predators that do not learn. And I'm not criticizing, I'm not, it's just a term I use because we are here to educate and I believe in restorative practices. But in those same kids, it's the same problem. The parents aren't involved. So now what? Now we just keep adjusting and adjusting, when we go, all right, listen, you're going to have to work this out in an alternate environment eventually while you fix this, because we can't have you in the school population every day.
Largely,
it's okay.
No, please. Let's live in that moment for when I let you down, all right? I'm trying.
Largely, I agree with you. How we go about doing that, obviously, is a much larger conversation. But largely, I do agree there does need to be some kind of a breaking point where, you can't keep asking the many to continue to conform to changes that are really driven by the actions of a few. So, largely, I do agree with you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Hockman, may I? Sure. Do you work with any other groups in the area?
As far as like community groups?
Yeah.
Yeah. Big Brothers Big Sisters of
Like our
Long
local
Island.
groups,
Oh,
sometimes there's alcohol abuse.
Oh, yeah.
Bullying, there's drug bullying, things like that.
yeah, I can't, to date, I can't think of specific ones off the top of my head. We do. Long Beach Reach, or now Long Island Reach, is a dependency outfit that we have good relationships with. So absolutely, we never turn away any, complementary or synergistic relationship.
I just have one other question. What makes you different than another coalition group?
Well, largely, and I'm very confident in saying that what we do, we're the only ones who do it. There are other organizations out there who, everybody talks about bullying. But the difference between them and us is that we only talk about bullying. This is the only issue that we confront and we tackle and we deal with. We don't have to worry about, we give 10% of attention to this, 100% of our attention is being given to this one issue.
Thank you.
I have a few.
You have questions?
Yes. Thank you. I think the presentation was outstanding, and you're doing a great job. So, I just have a few questions for you. You mentioned in your presentation regarding and understanding DASA and their requirements. Does any of your programs or resources help with the DASA process or anything along those lines?
Yes, we don't get overly involved in this is how you should report, this is what you should complete after that. The process obviously is, up to the school board. But we are actually looking at how we can, as a private organization, enhance what goes on within DASA, part of the investigation or part of the end result punishment, for lack of a better word, repercussions. What can we do? Is there training that we can specifically do with the student who is found to have been actually, doing the aggressive? So we can fit in there.
Moving on some of the same involvement with the schools, what programs do you have that can be meshed or jived with our social workers? Like, is there anything that, any other additional programs that can help our social workers as well do a better job with doing their job?
At the moment, no. But there are a lot of, can I tell you, here's what the plan is right now today? No. Are they in the works? Yes.
Okay. I only have two more, I promise. You mentioned about how you're applicable through K through 12 and age-appropriate material. I know you can look around this room and you can probably have 10 different definitions of what age-appropriate material is. Mm-hmm. My daughter's a second grader. What would be considered a age-appropriate program for like second grader or even third grader?
So excellent question. So we break it down K through 5. We used to break it down K through 5, 6 through 8, 9 through 12. Through a lot of the feedback we were getting from schools was that the difference between what a 7th grader needs to know and be educated on versus what a 10th grader needs to know is almost the same thing now. So you might as well just give us them all the time. We have different feelings on that, but to your specific question about K through 5, that goes more along the lines of what does respect look like, what is mean and unkind behavior, going back to the golden rule, using existing books and literature already to kind of enhance. We also will use character lenses, use characters that they already know in popular culture to give them a different way of looking at it. Analyzing Disney movies, for example, where was there bullying there? What is judging a book by its cover? Beauty and the Beast, for example, just because he looks mean and scary doesn't mean he actually is. Judgment and how that factors in. So that's what K through 5 would largely revolve around.
And then my last question here is, you seem to have a lot of programs in regard to conversation, both it seems from the aggressor and the one that is being bullied. Do you have any programs or training? Because I know I saw you sort of back on one of your slides regarding like karate referrals. Mm-hmm. Is there anything that you present that helps that, I don't want to say the weaker child, but the one that's getting bullied? Do you offer any programs that will help build that child's confidence, self-esteem, or even maybe helping them deal with it on a, again, I don't want to say the word stand up for oneself, but stand up for oneself.
Do you give them the tools they need to defend
So
themselves?
he's discussing self-defense.
Yes, so largely, that's handled on two aspects. The first one is on the initial call with the family, one of the things that our response agents do is actually give that information to the parents on how can, like, as a quick fix, what can we do? Looking in the mirror and telling yourself 5 positive things about yourself, things like that. But largely the karate, the dance, the equestrian, all that kind of stuff is specifically designed to build their self-confidence. We don't like to pay for people to go get karate so that they can learn how to karate chop each other. It's because learning karate and martial arts gives them that self-confidence and builds their self-esteem.
Thank you.
So our social workers are most of our counseling and our psychology, most of our testing. So do you have any school districts that actually gave you staff members that could work solely on the bullying in the classrooms? You're one person. You know, it's a big school, the middle school, the high school, the elementary schools. Did a school district ever allow you to have, you know, staff members that could just work on the bullying program with you?
To a degree, yes. Certain districts, Sayville, for example, is a good opportunity. They have a district director for student services that handles all of the SEL curriculum for the district. And then within that falls the social workers, things like that. And we do usually have touch points with the social work staff in each building where, you know, there's an exchange of information. Obviously, there's no breaches of confidentiality or anything like that. No student information, things like that. But we do continue to maintain touch points when we're in the building and out of the building.
So the curriculum that you have in the other districts that, you know, all of our curriculum must be tested by PAC, the teachers union, you know, to see that it coincides with, you know, their regulations and how it's together. So do you actually bring it to them too so that it's put into the classroom?
We've never had particular approval to the extent you're talking about. Our curriculums or the workshops and presentations that we bring into the classroom are all BOCES approved. So we've gone through that level of approval, but to the level you're talking about now.
And the reason why I'm asking is because I know there's quite a bit of COVID money. It was for learning loss, and I can't see not hiring or maybe looking at hiring some staff members to help get through this process, because we know it won't be there forever, but it might be helpful. But I don't think it would be helpful.
It certainly would. Sure. I would say it would, I'm sure.
Anybody have questions?
I have a question. To Mr. Giuseppe's point, it seems to be the same 5, 10 kids. Elementary school, middle school, they just roll off from high school fees and what happens. When I went to high school, which was not that long ago, they removed the kids and they sent them to NIAC. And there was a school that they had to stay in Monday through Friday. I went to school on Long Island, and they got to come home Friday night, and they got right back on the bus Sunday morning to go back to NIAC. Why didn't the school district have that? Because you have to remove the bad seats.
Yeah, and they took the program away.
How do you take a program like that away to eliminate the bad seats?
There seems to be some confusion in this district on the academy versus the ALC. The academy is a completely different program than the ALC was and or should be. The academy is for children who have anxiety, and it's a very specific criteria. It is not for children that have behavioral issues.
I don't want to put you off
The
for a second,
ALC
but
still keeps them in the district.
Yes,
I'm asking to remove them from the district,
Yeah,
because
from
not
out the
only,
building.
I'm sorry, I don't want to put you off. Not only are these, and to Mr. Lango's point, not only are they bullying in school, but the bullying is happening within the community. It's happening when they're bored. And if you take them out of the scenario, they're not bored. They're cleaning bathrooms. They're learning how to fold fitted sheets. You all might need that lesson.
I don't think we have the authority to do that.
Well, Syosset School District had no problem really.
We don't have.
No, if we can do that.
Yeah, that's the difficulty, but.
That's what the ALC, an alternate learning program, to take them
Yeah.
out of
I
those.
know
Right.
kids from my high school that were expelled, and because they had to have their education, they were forced to be sent to the school district. That was 1990-something to 95.
I'm not disagreeing with you. Your question is why don't we? Because we don't have the wherewithal to expel students. It's very, very, very difficult to expel students I'll be honest with you, very seldom done in public. However, one of the things I can say, and I appreciate your stay, I talked about before about forming a coalition. And one of the functions that we've talked about, and again, I'm early into this, and I don't want to rush into major decisions, but it's clear that we're looking at alternative pathways and alternative programs. We have to revisit that. Not just ballot, but what we can do, because the traditional setting isn't for everybody. And that's not just bullying behavior. There are kids who struggle socially and emotionally. Sitting in a cafeteria with 400 other students is really overwhelming for some kids. That's a reality. I don't do that except at Disney. I don't really go to Disney. But the reality is that it's something that when we look at, and I think that's one of the broader work district's going to do, is the traditional pathways don't work for everybody. And that's not just for kids who are struggling with bullying type behaviors. That's something that has to be worked for everybody. So I can assure you that it's definitely something that's front and center. And that's why when I talk about behaviors, we have to kind of look at all of it, but working with LICAP, we can also target certain areas with experts who work in that field. But we hear you. It's just very difficult to explain. That's all I wanted to say, not to
And it's not
contradict.
necessarily expulsion, but it's taking them out of the environment, giving them their education, and giving them other tools.
You can do that in another
Jackie?
building, but I don't think you should ship them off.
I'm sorry. Jackie, did you have a question?
Yes. Going back to the alternative learning program, we had one here for years. It worked well for many years. And then, if memory serves me, we kind of changed the way it was run or changed the staffing or whatever. We moved it to the high school, and I believe that's when it started to fall apart and the program was no longer useful. We housed it in another building for years, and it seemed to work well. I think it could work well again, given the right staff. I know I have spoken in length about it for 3 years. We've never really taken a serious look at it. I think as the lane progresses, there need to take a serious look at this because it is the same children over and over and over again. And while I'm interested to see where restorative practices go, you know, it's something else has to be done because some kids just don't care. They don't care.
And you know
whatever.
that sees, in fact, more kids and.
So to that point, have you worked in schools that offer an alternative learning program like that, where they house a program for children with behavioral issues?
Not my child. It's never their child that they're.
I'm not sure. I don't want to say yes
Okay.
or no to that.
So that's fine.
I do, having my school district, I went to have programs on.
So, I mean, so then I think you would agree with me that something like that might be very effective if done properly. And I have every faith in our administration and in town that they could put a program like that together successfully. Can you just elaborate on what these workshops look like in the classroom? How many classrooms get to experience your workshop?
So that's a good question. Every one of them. What we do is we would find subject matters that every child takes. For example,
Everyone in every building, every classroom. A lot of classrooms.
It is, but that's
okay. That's fair enough. How long would something like that take? How long to? Like, would you say a whole year?
Yes. So in the isolated conversation we've so far had at the middle school level, it would probably take about 9 days to get through everybody, if I recall correctly. Right? That was about right. That was about right. So about 9 days to get through 6 through 8.
Okay. And how long are these workshops while you're in the classroom?
They go for a period.
So the whole 40 minutes. Okay. And
yes,
when
my wonderful face becomes their teacher.
Hey, listen, and you collect data on every classroom that you go to,
so long as they opt in, as long as the opt-in is as simple as here's a QR code, we love to hear your feedback. If they choose to scan
and
it.
And then once you collect that data, what do you do with that data?
It helps us, figure out, is this working? Is it not working? Does there need to be more interaction? Does there not need to be?
So let's say it wasn't working in this classroom over here. What do you do next?
Sometimes it's immediate recalibration. We look at the end of each day, we go back because it's all, computed through technology. So at the end of the day, I can just run a simple look back report and say, okay, the 400 of them that came in today, they didn't rank this too high. So you know what we're doing? Tomorrow we're going to scrap it. Or I'm going to keep it, but I'm going to, kind of change up how it actually works.
So is that more of an evaluation on what you're delivering, not so much as what the kids are getting from it?
It's both. There are several questions. There are several questions on it. Some of them are for our internal purposes to see how effective we are, and some of it is how effective they believe it is.
Jackie, do you have any more questions?
Yeah, is any of these in class, like, just give me an example. Do you just go in there and talk about your own experience? I know you said that sometimes you just did some examples. Is any of it hands-on, like putting them in groups of 4s or?
Elementary level.
Say, go sit with two people that you don't normally sit with or speak with, or?
There's some of that. There are K through 5. There's the turn to talk lessons where they actually turn and have conversations with each other, exchange information, and repeat it back to me. But as far as more hands-on activities in the older grades, obviously that's not all that attractive to them. But there are, we do an invisible backpack activity, for example, that actually each one of them gets a golf ball, and they don't know why they have a golf ball until the end, and the purpose of that is to get them to examine that the golf ball means that they have a problem, and they're admitting to everybody around them that they have at least one problem. Now, how does that correlate to the issue and empathy? So there are things like that go along with it too.
Thank you.
So, I'm sorry. Lady over here, you had a question?
I just was saying that being new to the community, personal experience, I have 4 kids on the community. The whole thing in this is, yes, it's the kids, it's the this. Everybody wants to blame somebody. Every parent in this community, it's always not my child. That's the biggest problem that I see in this entire community. Nobody is willing to expect any kind of responsibility for their own child at all.
Well, if I may, that's not necessarily exclusive to only Lindenhurst.
Exactly, but that's what I live. So I live here, so what's going on?
Right, no, absolutely fair point. Coming from the perspective of working with island-wide communities, that is one of the major problems, which is why one of the planks to the program is the engagement of the community and the parents, because that has to be resolved in some ways.
We got that way from
The
coaching.
gentleman in the back there,
Yeah.
And that's where the problems come from.
So, you talk a lot about healing the victim.
Yeah.
Helping the victim cope, get through it, understand. Let's stop the problem. We have to, it's called discipline. Everybody in here, I'm sure some of the older people didn't forget. There's consequences at home. It's called discipline. I don't want to tell you what my discipline was back in the day. If I did something wrong, I'd have to deal with the teacher at school.
Probably similar to what my discipline was.
Right. If you slow the bully down, if you slow him down, you give him attention, take the extras away from school. I knew bullies of last year when I had to pull my daughter out that still walked in graduation. What were the consequences? They were still doing school sports. They were still hanging out after school at school grounds. My daughter wasn't there. My daughter was laying in bed with clumps of hair coming out of her head. I dealt with my daughter. The minute I took my daughter out of the school, that problem went away. My last conversation with the administration of the middle school was, I'm not going away. I might go to sleep for a little while. But my voice is going to be heard. Everybody else in this district, all the parents on Facebook, they work at night. You know what? People talk a lot. There is a lot going on in this district that you have no idea about. 200, 300 parents on a private Facebook page with the same stories. Their voices aren't being heard. The DASA reports aren't getting done. Okay, I spoke to a scientist from the first precinct. She's so overwhelmed with everything else that's going on in the town of Valley. The liaison from the first precinct. She said, I've never seen anything like this before. And then when that person finally caves and gives up and becomes submissive, as you know, I know children that did not return to school and actually started to harm themselves at home. The parents are beside themselves. But it was the same group of kids. Now they're moving up to the high school. They might not get away with that for the next couple of years with the seniors and the juniors. But don't think they're not victimizing the same kids that they did before. It's just moving up a grade level. So now the middle school now again has, not my problem because they're up in high school now. But there's another group of kids coming in. And it's going to continue to travel.
Well, to that point, that's why when I started, I specifically said that I don't think we can just focus only on one age group. That has to be the K through 12 because you're not just going to get through the seeds you got now and eliminate them in the
problem's over. It's going to be a constant cycle, which means you do have to get to them at an earlier age and hopefully start the problem at the earlier age.
I don't think that's relatively true, because I find that much more of the elementary school children are very, they're learning, right? And they're not so aggressive, and you know when there's children that are having social issues, you can see it in the classroom. And that is generally addressed by a teacher, right? Because the teacher can navigate that. That's what they're there for. They're elementary school.
If I could chime in, I would love to. So I'm the chair of the board for the Long Island Coalition Against Bullying. I also happen to be a Lindenhurst born and raised, graduated in 2012. So the mission, when I joined a few years ago, resonated with me. I happen to be a very lucky student who had teachers that stepped in for me when I was bullied as a
That
kid.
was my question. Do we focus on the teachers at all? Because the
So, and
teachers
I'm
are
actually
not
going to address
seeing
that. So I think that what we're all getting back to here, and it so saddens me as a Lindenhurst resident or former resident that recently moved, that this is something I have to, that LICAB was alerted to. But we keep getting back to this being a cultural problem, right? And I think what's a little different about LICAB that helps really get to the root of communities in situations like this and resolve them, as opposed to just, to your point, helping the bully feel a little better, let's put a Band-Aid on it, let's make them feel better and not get down to the root issue, is that we deal with every aspect of it, because we're going to go to the educators, we're going to help them identify early on how to handle it, and then we're going to help them navigate that, because as an educator, it's a very uncomfortable position to be in often. We're a resource for the school district regarding what they can and cannot, do from a legal perspective, advice from a third party without the pressure of, appeasing a certain, the community of what really is the right way to manage a situation and where they should step in. And then we're also here for the parents, whether it's the bully or the bullied, if they recognize a problem, they want to deal with it. Recently, and I don't know how much I could talk about it, we have a great relationship with the legal community as well. We've done a lot of presentations at the Nassau and Suffolk bars. They want to utilize us as remedial programs for the bullies, so that they legally have to work with us in some capacity to really drill down. So I think, for Lindenhurst, this might really be a nice way to just address this from every angle and actually make that community change, because that's what we keep circling back to here, is that it's a cultural problem, right? So you can't just blame it on a kid, and you can't just blame it on a parent, and you can't really blame it on the school.
No, you can't, but you know what? It has to be, the first part of it is recognizing.
Absolutely, and I think the community
There's a lot of people in the
that.
community that don't even recognize it, because like she said, not my kid.
Can I say something wrong? Can I say something? Go ahead.
So my name is Lauren Novello, and I'm the executive director of the Lindenhurst Community Cares Coalition. And I kind of met with the LICAB people outside, and now I've heard their presentation. There's never enough community awareness, So if the school district decides to bring it forward, first I want to throw my support with my coalition to you. I mean, it's a community coalition, we have a board as well, but we would love to supplement or fill any gaps or anything like that. But I do want to make an announcement to this group that I held a couple of parent meetings about this, and only 2 parents showed up. So either there's there's definitely a miscommunication. I just want to point out one thing to the people who are struggling. I just want you to know that anybody in the middle school or the high school, we have youth groups. It's giving youth a voice, and they meet on Tuesdays. So I just want to say, I know that this is a huge problem, and there's a giant fix that needs to happen. But if anybody has someone struggling right now, those groups are available, run by 2 master social workers, because I don't allow volunteers near anybody's students. And in the high school, I don't trust people. But in the high school, it's run by a math teacher. And one of the things they do is cultivate that healing situation, so that, you can't really be bullied if you're part of a group. So I'm going to leave because I got to get going. But thank you. I was invited by one of the school board members to hear about this. Lori Novello. It's Lindenhurst Community Cares. So whatever happens here, our organization is there. But drilling down, there is definitely interventions that could take place. That I think that this was a great awareness for the people in this room, and I hope that it spreads to people who need to know. But first things first, when they have club day, I think parents who have kids who are struggling a little bit, check out the Lindy Cares group, because we are about to be serious.
So the club is Tuesdays?
Yeah, generally they meet on Tuesdays, all right? So thank you for your time.
One of the things that Lorianne is underscoring, and I've reached out to her, when I talk about a coalition is, as you just really showed, there are resources available, not only to the district, but the community, people don't know about. So we need to get those minds in the room together so that we can document, we can articulate, and let people know where they can go inside the district and outside. There is a web of support outside the district in this community that people don't really know about. We want to capitalize on the people.
I think just having something like official, like having somebody come in and do a whole district-wide thing, and just the kids, the parents of the kids who aren't necessarily involved in it need to be more aware, because those are the kids that can come in and stick up for the other kids. You know, because you've got the bullies, you've got the being bullied, but then you have all these other kids who would be a great resource to just, you know, to say something and do something.
And can I make an announcement? We do the Trick or Trunk October 29th at the gazebo. We generally incorporate messaging into the culture of the community, the things the community likes to do. We also hold Light Up Lindy, the Christmas trees, which is a food drive. And these are things that I hope people in this room will spread to other people so that we can continue our work. We don't focus on bullying, but we definitely can complement all the different things that you guys are talking about and get behind people in a positive way. So, you know, I just wanted to put that out there and put those dates out as well. Also, on November 19th, we bring together all the resources. We have a meeting, a Spirit of the Community meeting. You can come into the room and we give all the different people who provide resources about 3 minutes to talk about it. And it's a great way to learn about these things. But I'm telling you, I've been doing this since 2015. People don't take advantage of these opportunities. So I'm really happy that you're here, Mrs. Davidson, because you really want to let us be a conduit to professional services. Open the door and the window for people to actually see what's out there, because it is hidden, and obviously it needs to be revealed. So this board, you know, thank you so much for really getting everybody out here and uncovering, you know, the process that a lot of people hide behind because of the stigma. So I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lori.
Okay, Mrs. Saylor, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah,
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you so much. Can everyone hear me? Just want to make sure that everyone hears what I have to say today, because
How about
Little one steps too.
okay, so I wrote this down because I feel like at the moment when I got the news of what had occurred, I just felt like, and I feel it, and I'm stressed right now, because I just feel like we're going in circles. So first and foremost, we do have problems with the kids and students exhibiting the aggressive behaviors. And these behaviors that are being exhibited are not just limited to schools. Obviously, we touched base on that. These behaviors have continued through the summer. The harassment, it didn't end for those being targeted. Thankfully, it wasn't my child, but it was other children and our new children. Snapchat, TikTok, whatever. The social media aspect, it doesn't help it. But what are we doing in our school? Now, anything I say, I'm going to touch on the DASSA. What are we doing in the school about the social media aspect of this situation? When I met with the board members, we discussed at length some of these issues. But was anything added to let the students know that their negative actions on social media will have consequences? I've received emails from several parents that I'm going to share their story. I promised them I wouldn't use their names because the drive-by, like I said, the drive-by name calling hasn't stopped. This one parent, she filed reports, she's called the school, and yet still 2 years later, her child is still being targeted. Another parent shared with me on Facebook that, that her child is being harassed. The student in my situation, has now taken to sharing her number with his little friends. And now they're sending her ghost text messages, they're calling her, and they're taking photos from her Facebook and using it as their gaming profile, as a joke, her kids' photos. These behaviors have now crossed the line. When does it end? When, as a district, are you going to step in to stop this and stop these students with these behaviors? So just before this meeting, another parent called me to share her story with me. She was hysterical in tears. Last year, she resorted to sending her child to the Lindenhurst Academy because of the anxiety that he was feeling due to bullying that he endured all through last year. While the school spoke to the students involving the situation, nothing really happened because the kids were good students and they were honor students. They can be bullies too. Instead, the kids figured out who told on them and continued to verbally abuse this person's son, and then got physical with him on the bus. When the parent asked for options to help her child get up in the morning to get to school, the only options that were given to her were the Lindenhurst Academy or homeschooling. How exactly has that helped did that help that child's anxiety and social, inappropriateness at that moment? So how will the district now help this parent? Because now she has resorted to homeschooling. He's not going back, he just can't do it, I can't get him out of the house. So how will the district help parents from making the wrong decision, like placing a child out of his home school instead of handling the problem behavior? I 100% appreciate the implementation of LICAB into our schools and educating the staff on how to see the signs to handle these situations. But how are you helping parents? Are we educating parents on what to do? Does the district have a new plan in place to properly help parents with the aggressive behaviors their child is enduring in and out of school? Most parents that contact me didn't even know about DASA. They didn't know what a DASA report was. Today was the first day in my 20-some odd years in this school that I saw this presentation. But I knew about it because I had to get certified, and that was one of my certification studies. So how will this program help students who have endured the emotional abuse? Because right now, that's what it is. Bullying, it's emotional abuse. When you have kids who don't want to get up and go to school because they're afraid, that's emotional abuse. But I want to also ask my DASA, one of my questions that was asked at the June meeting, when my daughter was present and we spoke, it was never answered. Instead, something else that I said was taken out of context and we focused on that. So I'm going to ask again. And when you respond, please respond to me with the respect that I've given you all these years when I've addressed you at these meetings, and not with the disrespect shown to me in front of my child in our June meeting. My question: during the 2021-2022 school year, I filed several DASA reports. During my research on DASA protocol, I came across information stating that after filing a DASA report, once the school looks into and settles the issue or hands down consequences, parents are giving a resolution report. In June, I inquired of this report, and within days, I received it in the mail. But I only got 2. I filed more than 2. Did the district handle my DASA filings properly, or was the district out of compliance with DASA filings? What's different aside from implementing this program? How are we helping students who have developed severe anxiety due to the treatment that they've endured in school and sometimes out of school? What's the new school policy for aggressors? What intervention and proactive measures are being taken to make this year better for our students? Mr. Davidson, I appreciate your transparency and the time that you've taken to meet with myself and my daughter during the summer. but I haven't heard of a new plan for handling the behavior situations in our schools. All due respect to Mrs. Salamone, his program is a great tool for our school that helps change some behaviors, but it's not the fix-all. That needs to come from the district. So for example, my daughter was promised that the student that harassed her last year wouldn't be in any of her classes, lunch or gym. Why was he the first face he saw in her lunch period on the first day of school? Are we winging this? Was this just lip service to keep Mrs. Saylor happy? Are we expected to go back and act like this student didn't terrorize my child last year? Because right now I feel like nothing's going to change. And maybe I'm wrong. I really am truly hoping that there is change. But this scares me not only for my child, but for the other students within our schools. And I'm verbal. My daughter showed me the woman that she was going to become, a very strong woman, when she stood up here and she spoke to you. But why is she still scanning a lunchroom to make sure that this kid is not going to be behind her on the line, saying something or doing something? So you mentioned parent consequences. This is another thing. What happens when a parent mistreats a child because she knew that the child filed a DASHA report against hers? Because that's exactly what happened to my daughter serving for National Junior Honor Society. So you see, this is broken. And I'm not broken. And while I stand here shaking and upset, I will be the face you see every month until there is change. Because it's got, my daughter will not go through another 5 years of this. And we can blame parents, we can blame anybody, but it's you sitting in those seats, okay? It's you guys making these decisions, and I expect you to keep my child safe. I have not gone to work yet. I have not gone back to work because I am waiting for the other shoe to drop. I need to get back to work. I have bills to pay. I want this change. I'm not going away. And my daughter will feel safe in your school. Otherwise, I'm not going to pay $11,000 to go to private school to keep her safe. Somehow, if that's what I have to do, because I can't do this anymore. My heart breaks for her, and while she may look strong, she's still a little girl that should never have experienced what she experienced, and should have never seen this kid in her lunch period. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions?
I would like my answers via email, please, because I do want those answers.
I wrote everything,
Thank you.
everything down that you wrote.
Thank you.
You'll get a response back.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Approval of the minutes.
Second move the minutes for the August 17th business meeting.
Second.
Mr. Landau, seconded by Mr. DeGiuseppe.
Given the lateness of the hour, I will forward the superintendent's report. I was just telling you about upcoming events and the successful.
I just want everybody to know that I'd like to thank you for coming in and doing this presentation. So, this presentation was part of the $8 million COVID relief money that we have, and it's to better the students that are coming in with social and emotional issues. So if anybody has any suggestions or ideas or other programs that they'd like to let us know about, that we can present to the community, please let me know. Okay?
The Farmingdale program, I asked for 3 years for it to be looked at.
Farmingdale?
Send Mr. Davidson an email, maybe he can make a call over the Farmingdale superintendent.
Give me the information, okay? Because all COVID money that's spent must be in a public arena with public input. So, you know, these are your children, we're open to programs, take a look out there, see what, you know, is going on, and if you'd like to give us an email, shoot us an email, let us know any types of programs. I'm sorry, I can't do that. There's certain restrictions. Okay, so,
Working on a timeline. We're working on a timeline, we're looking at it next month or so. We have to work it
out. Delegations, does anybody have any questions on agenda items? Agenda items, okay. Yeah, nah, you know,
I'll be loud enough. Just on agenda items 9.2, 3, 4, and 5, the second reading.
Yes.
Those are second readings tonight, correct?
Yes, they are.
So then are we voting on, well, are you voting on them to implement the policy changes? So last time I was here, I asked about them, and I did go back and see that you did highlight in one of them some of the changes, so I appreciate you doing that. If there's no highlighting in the policies, does that imply that there was no change, you're just reviewing that policy standing as is?
I don't know if you want to speak to that, you want to speak.
Whatever you guys want to do, I mean.
Okay. The policies were highlighted that showcase changes, and they've been updated since, so it indicated changes. The policy's up there now, changed, edited, and those are the ones being voted on.
I know those are the ones being voted on.
There's no highlight.
So there's no, because I noticed in the parent compact one that there was a highlight, and so was that to indicate that was a change?
Yeah, and for us too. Yeah.
Okay, I have a couple of questions. So
Okay.
just bear with me. So the parent compact, when I asked Mr. Caravano, explained that that was something that was sort of like a guideline that you could send home. So it did come home through Parent Square on the high school level. It only came home on the high school level. So is there an implication for parents who don't agree to monitor their kids' screen time or volunteer at their kids' school, sign that paper and send it back? And are we sending that paper, are we sending that same form home on the middle school and elementary schools? As I told you guys last time, as an involved PTA person, I think it's a great thing. I just want to know how we can implement it effectively. It came home as in the Parent Square message, it was like there were 6 different things in there. I looked it up, I was like, oh, we were just talking about that.
Yeah. 4 hours in before we found
Mr.
this.
Caravano was very instrumental in helping us craft that and make sure it was up to speed. He could probably speak to that.
I was not aware that Dr. Brody had sent that forward. I'm going to take a look, and what we can do is we can take that revised parent and family engagement policy and we can pass it along to the entire district. So that
Like I said, I think it's a great policy. I just, first of all, I couldn't print it. So what happens if my kid, my printer wasn't working? That's neither here nor there, but if she doesn't bring it into school, you know, there's that. And how are we going forward as a district to ensure that? My next question, the other policies that we were looking at tonight were the bullying, prohibited contact, and reported violations. So are we adopting the policy as is, or could you explain some of the changes? Should we consider holding off till we consult with the coalition and updating our bullying policies?
Is that the 0115 or is that the 53?
Yeah, I didn't bring the policies in. They're inside. Do you have yours?
Yeah.
0115 is 9.2.
Yeah, 0115 is student harassment and bullying prevention intervention.
The 0115, you saw a lot of changes in that one. So that's a real goal. So what we did was, we did not have any very little, I should say, social media consequences dealing with cyberbullying. As I said the last time, one of the things that we get from our New York State School Boards Association is they help us, where they will give us wording that's really important because they have teams that work on this that are legal. Yeah, Josephine was correct.
No, I know that you weren't here last time.
Oh,
you weren't here last time.
Yeah, we were working on it.
And so a lot of those updates that are put in is understanding more populations are.
Okay.
Understanding what sexual harassment and the cyberbullying and social media and saying, I don't even know how much we mentioned social media in the
question is, if we're adopting it tonight, can we look to revisit it again?
We may have to
Soon.
revisit it.
Okay.
Just because we update a policy now, if we
Doesn't mean
choose
that you're not touching it.
we don't have to wait for.
Right, we also, just so everyone knows, that's what we're working on now. Just so everyone knows, we also, have a revision as well.
Okay.
Would rather have a stake in the ground.
Right,
Right, then have some, right, so have something
So
there.
in this particular group, this may be a different revision as to the policy that we're implementing and looking at tonight.
Okay, I think those were all the questions for you. Thank you. Mrs. Herrick?
Thanks for reading them.
Yeah, right, we worked on it.
I like it. Dig deep down. 9/11, the Tiger Kids grant, can you just go a little bit into that? Is that like a parent road grant or like program, school, teacher?
We had a second grade teacher, Ms. Fisher, write a grant in order to get flexible seating. She was awarded that grant, and we're excited about that.
Very exciting. Do you know how many seats they'll be able to purchase in that?
I'm sorry, what's that?
How many seats? Do you know how many fidget seats they'll be able to purchase?
You can get back to me.
Every kid wanted Mrs. Fisher in her class, and she moved up to 3rd grade. I was like, shocked.
I know that we have them sporadically throughout the district, but have we ever looked at maybe implementing them a little bit more throughout classrooms?
I don't think we're adverse to doing that. I think we realize that educations are changing and that they need to change in order to adapt to different types of children needs and a different educational environment. So in terms of looking at furniture, that's something we're absolutely going to look at.
And if we did, and let's say, maybe this would be the threat, if we could somehow, it could be aidable if it was considered assistive technology, no? Like if a child's IEP, a parent, I'll use my own child. I want my child to have a fidget chair or
And on the bottom, so.
yeah, or a movable desk and that thing, and none of that furniture is in my child's desk. Could that be something we could do?
So when you talk about aidable in terms of special ed, it has to be past a certain cost. So it's the total cost to educate that specific child. In terms of adding IEPs, we have done that in the past. We have added flexible seating. We furnished many of our self-contained classes, many of our life skills classes with flexible seating, with standable desks, a variety of things to meet the needs of our learners.
So maybe that's something we can look at. That might be an idea. That might help.
Can we get one for the boardroom?
Any other questions? Does anybody else have any other questions on agenda items? Consideration of consent agenda 7.1.
I'd like to move the consent agenda as presented.
Moved by Ms. Leonard.
Second.
Moved by Mariella. Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries 8-0-0.
So I do want to welcome Ms. Moon, who the board just acted on and appointed as a new assistant principal at Laurel Elementary School. We're so excited. It's been a long night. It really has to be.
All right, do we have any unfinished business?
Ms. Hockman?
Page 7.
How you doing?
Doing good.
Hope you enjoyed the first half of the meeting. Let's get to the second half of the meeting now. Now, can we revisit and discuss, we don't do tonight, the Chromebook policy?
I think this is an item that's come up, and I think it's something that I thought
Did that come up?
maybe
The
gives-
deadline, like the 26th or something? So, yeah.
In the past, there was no mechanism for the district if students lost Chromebooks, damaged Chromebooks. Devices cost about $450 a piece. So we found that there were times where a student lost a Chromebook, they'd get another Chromebook, was another Chromebook. And district bore the cost. In other words, the taxpayers had to pay for these devices for other kids who lost devices. We developed a Chromebook agreement, and this is something that was in transition with Mr. Giordano, me, and Mrs. Friedman. So if I understand there may be some excitement with the communication component of it, but the remedy to that is we can't have unlimited Chromebooks. We have to be able to, it's irresponsible, but we can't do that for the community. So conversely, we will take care of minimal repairs that we can take care of. But if we offer parents the opportunity to come with insurance, they're not required. It's completely optional. And it's something we wanted to offer in order to cover any accidental damage, wear and tear, and so on, with a third-party organization. I think the analogy of how we test fits is, okay, you don't have to take it. We can make accommodations for elementary kids to be able to have access to one in the classroom, or a secondary through Home Depot to pick one up. It's difficult for a child to do that. It's a bit of inconvenience, but it's something that we could accommodate. But we also know that kids sometimes don't have devices at home that they can use. So we want to be able to balance something that's ethically sound and still be fiscally responsible. Because in the end, it was costing, at times, $200,000 a year in order to replace and repair. So we're not looking to shift costs onto parents, but there has to be a degree of accountability for students, similar to this if they lost a damaged textbook. They still would have to replace or pay for that. Granted, it's a lesser cost, we understand that. So I know that that's something that's come up, and we really wanted to bear down. It is optional. We feel that it's something that would benefit parents.
Can I ask you? Go ahead.
I had to sign off on responsibility of their Chromebooks, that if it got broken, depending on the circumstance, like if some kid takes my kid's Chromebook and throws it into the middle wall of everything, I'm not paying for it, which has happened. However, my daughter's charger's gone bad, and I've had to $25 later order one from Amazon because she needs to know. So why would I pay insurance on something that if something goes wrong with it anyway, I'm paying to fix it no matter what?
Yeah, the insurance is so that you don't have to pay for it. The insurance covers the repair. That's what. Yeah. And I would say in terms of, look, if we look at a situation where another student still uses our school, it's certainly a different circumstance. It is. But it is to make sure that if it is damaged, accidental damage, which happens, that $26 covers it.
I appreciate
and that's why it's
I appreciate that, Mr. Davidson, and I don't think anyone's arguing about the $26. I mean, there's not a fundraiser in this town where everyone doesn't pull $20 out of their pocket. The thing is, though, is before it was covered, and now it's not. So the insurance is kind of, okay, it's there, but really what we're also saying is you no longer have coverage. Am I correct on that?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, again, it is a responsibility.
It's
a responsibility. Absolutely.
Now, I think it's a Venmo thing. Check.
Venmo me later as a fundraiser.
This is my only issue.
I'm sorry, Mr. Davidson.
My son has a MacBook, but I'm being told he has to have a Chromebook. It's like, I try to say I don't need a Chromebook, he's got a MacBook, which is way better than a Chromebook.
No, but I understand. One of the things too is also safety and security, and the BYOD, it brings two complications. One, MacBook is very, very costly, right? So that it's obviously you're carrying something worth usually well over $1,000. So that's a bit of a security. The other is our security within our environment. If we have BYOD, it compromises safety and security in our environment, and it makes us very prone to hacking, to all sorts of attacks. So that's why we can't have the BYOD. It makes it very difficult.
How often do you look, because obviously a laptop or a Chromebook does not that. So my son's only in second grade. He's expected to have a Chromebook until he's a senior in high school. Like, that's not going to work. So how often
No,
does
it's
it
really, I don't want to be inaccurate. I want to say every 4 to 5 years.
Depends on generally now they're 4 to 5 years.
So does that mean my 10th grader is getting a new Chromebook because she's had it for
Yes.
They generally are. I mean, and again, the Chromebooks are relatively new in that sense. They're not, like having a device in this day and age is something that eventually, I don't know what it's going to be 10 years
Well, the kids that are now seniors in high
since the sixth graders got that was the internal initiative. So now
I mean,
they're
again, I
seeing
have to look at the phasing out, but it's generally 4 to 5
I mean, I'm not saying
days.
there's
But we
any
also,
wrong with it. What
no,
if,
it doesn't,
like-
we won't charge for regular wear and tear over the course of years and years.
A couple of keys missing.
Okay.
Wear and tear, any other unfinished business?
Yes,
Teachers have?
yes, just one more thing. The baseball field, can we just get an estimate? I don't know if it's within the realm of possibility at this point right now, if we wanted to start it. We only have like up until October to do it. But can we just get an estimate on what it would cost? And then we'll evaluate if it fits within our parameters of what we want to do there and all that other good stuff. Is that possible?
Before I answer that question, it is possible. What I will say is, I don't know the field use conditions and whether or not we could rest that field, and maybe we do. You might even know better than I. So I need to talk to the athletic director to understand that. My concern about getting, and we can get an estimate, is raising an expectation.
Exactly.
We have not budgeted funds specifically for that project. And I know that one of the things we've talked about, you just have the end of the board, is working on long-term planning.
Yeah.
And I would hate to start a field that eventually we're going to do something, we may do something different, whether or not we will. And it's, we have to think longer term in terms of that. But I see that we can get an estimate.
That's all.
But again, I don't know that it's something that's a reasonable expectation to go forward with that.
We can make a decision on it. It might not be.
You have a bond coming up very quickly, so.
I'm well aware of that. Will it cost anything to get an estimate?
No.
All right, that's all. All right, I just have 16 more things on new business.
Well, now we're going to move to new business. Oh, I'm sorry, Sarah, do you have a question?
I have a quick question regarding swimming, and that's the reason I'm here in this meeting today.
I got your email. Can we?
You didn't get my email, you got somebody else's email. There's a whole bunch of mothers, a whole bunch of families that are interested in swimming at the Lindenhurst High School pool. My kids were swimming with Islanders Aquatics probably for the past 4 or 5 years. During the COVID, that stopped, and basically the Islanders moved down to Sable Middle School, where Sable Middle School did not have a problem renting their pool to the kids. The kids swam there, but it's quite a ride, and since I'm working for 5 o'clock to take the kid over there to Sable, it's a little bit of a pain, and it's a 3-hour swim, so you got to hang out there. And the coach, Mark, who is the owner of Islanders Aquatics, wanted to come back to Lindenhurst and start swimming again here. In the past, he's paid like 10 grand for the year to rent this pool. Now he's been told that the rent's going up to $80,000 a year, which means that us parents, whoever wants $80,000, whoever wants to send their kids to swim, which is total private, it's not a high school swim or anything like that. We have to raise that price like 8 times. Okay. Last year, quite a few kids from high school got to counties. Coach Anderson was very happy. We held dinner at the Mama's Lombardi's. Everybody was very happy. There's, I think, 1 or 2 kids that actually got to stay as well, all because they were swimming extra time with this extra team throughout all these years. Since 2020, there's no swim at the high school, okay? And we're trying to bring this back. There's a lot of families in Lindenhurst that would love to have swimming back in this pool. And I know there's some people that are really angry. I'm not exactly sure if it is or not, but I'm trying to talk to some parents. They're sending emails to Mr. Ward, Mr. Caravana, and I think you as well. I've been trying to contact Mr. DiGiordano last year. He's basically told me that there's nothing he can do because it's all this board that does make the decision.
Can I just,
Of course.
honestly, this is the first of my today. I'll be forthright. In about 7 o'clock, I opened my emails, and we had to get into a meeting. I saw that somebody just attacked the swing, so I don't know what the issue was. We need some time, let's look into this. We need to get more information. This is the first time.
We're here, we got it.
Yeah. Sir, can I just ask a quick question? Is Islander Aquatics, is it fair to say, are they a not-for-profit?
I believe so. I'm not exactly sure. I'm not part of the foundation at all.
So you can also, sorry, if I could, in the email we got literally right before we showed up here, it's also, the woman said that a majority of the people on the team are Lindenhurst residents. Is that right?
That's correct. Not everybody's from Lindenhurst.
Right, so basically, what I'm hearing is it's a not-for-profit organization.
No, it's not for-profit.
We gotta look into it.
Right. So I'm just asking for that information and then we'll look into it.
Okay.
We have to look into it.
The owner's name is Coach Mark Dannon. He's been using the pool probably prior to COVID, since like maybe 2013 or 2014. I'm not exactly sure. My kids were swimming since they was born.
We're not gonna ignore it, we just need to look at it.
I know, and I just, because there's going to be more people coming down this week. I came late the 21st. I think I'm going to come here today and maybe start something coming up.
I'll tell you that we're going to look into this because this is new to us.
Okay.
Once we get information, whether we agree to it.
Now, I'm not exactly sure.
And we don't teach, so we want to be able to give you that information. Like, we'll certainly respond. I know that we have one email. Here, you can email me. And I will give more information. If I
emailed Mrs. Giordano last year. Basically, I would have to check when I did that.
I'm sure you did. I just don't have that.
And he just said there's nothing he can do. The board has to make that decision.
And I don't think the board is really in this situation. So we have more information.
It would be cheaper if all the residents just went on Wednesday night and swam for $1.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Okay. Do we have any unfinished business? Do we have any new business? No more new business? Come on. Let's go.
Motion to
Can I get a
adjourn.
motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion.